Okay, you're gonna be live in like 10 seconds.
So just like countdown to like. Zero watching shootout. Oh. Yeah, I saw that. It's like, what are they doing? Catch up. Just let us know whenever you're ready, Dylan.
All right, we're ready. Go ahead.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right. Well, everybody, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now I'll ask Julie for a roll call, please.
Here.
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 Thanks, Julie. Now, may I have a volunteer to read the mission statement? Thanks, Felicia. First, I want to thank the public for streaming in through YouTube today on the district's website. Throughout the meeting, similar to last month, if the public has any, or earlier this month, sorry, if the public has any questions, please submit the questions to askdv@dvsd.org. And those questions that are pertinent to the conversation and the meeting will be addressed at the end of the meeting. And I'd also like to announce that there was an executive session held on Tuesday, August 18th, 2020 at 5:45 p.m. to discuss personnel issues. Before we move to a motion to adopt the agenda, similar to the last two meetings, I would like to move Dr. Bell and his cabinet's presentation to the end of the meeting so that there's more continuity of the conversation, if that's okay with everybody. So with that slight change, now may I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held on August 6th, 2020?
So moved.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have, are there any comments on the financial reports? No comments. We'll move to the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Corey. You just have a few things in terms of calendar because summer has come to a close. Tomorrow, the letters go home to the students. The secondary students will see their schedules, and the elementary students will see their tentative homeroom or classroom teachers for this school year. Again, they're tentative because there's so much in flux between kids coming in, kids Zooming, kids leaving to go to DV Cyber, but those letters that everybody looks for, usually in early August, are delayed, of course, because of all the things going on with the pandemic. So they go home tomorrow. Tuesday really kicks off the new year because that's new teacher orientation. So we'll have the teachers in to put them through the paces and get them up to speed as fast as possible. Thursday of next week, all the 10-month staff return. We won't have our traditional district meeting in the auditorium for obvious reasons. Everybody will just report to their home schools and start off with their faculty and staff meetings and get moving from there. So that'll be a little different. And then next Friday is our in-service or staff training day to help kick off to be ready for opening day on Monday, August 31st. That's the first day for the kids. So next week's the prep week to get ready for the kids on the following Monday. Okay. Oh, the only other thing is that there'll be orientations next week for kindergarten, 6th grade and 9th grade. There'll be information coming home about that as well.
Excellent.
And that's it.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Bell? Hearing none. We'll move on to the treasurer's report, and thanks, John.
Sure.
May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion to accept the bills for payment, which include the general fund, cafeteria fund, and the capital reserve fund?
So moved.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. Moving on to personnel items, may I have a motion to approve the personnel items, including resignations, appointments, requests for childbearing leaves, change of status, change of salary, and requests for FFCRA leaves with retirement accepted with regret?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. We'll move on to the items for approval. May I have a motion for the approval of Board Policy 831 live stream video? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of bus drivers and corresponding routes for the 2020-2021 school year as per the attachment? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of the revised curricula for the 2020-2021 school year as per the attachment? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of the renegotiated Roar bus service contract as per Act 13 of 2020?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Was the question, what was the renegotiation? Okay, during the year 1920, with Roar guaranteeing that they'll have their staff in case we opened up school, we had to continue to pay them per the law. We were able to renegotiate because for the 56 days we did not have school, they did not have to use their fuel. So we renegotiated the contract and got a $50,000 credit that's going to be applied to 2021 and 21-22.
Are there any other questions or comments on that item? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of Plan Con K for the Delaware Valley School District General Obligation Note Series 2020 for submission to the Pennsylvania Department of Education?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. All right, may I have a motion for the approval to, may I have a motion to approve the settlement agreement between the district and employees 2019-2020 02402, 2019-2020 02401, and 2019-2020 03156, as it relates to the matter docketed in the Middle District Court of Pennsylvania as case number 3:18-CV-00660, and the settlement agreement between the district and employees 2019-2020 02899, 2019-2020 03155, and 2019-2020 03519. Is there any discussion?
Can't be.
Personnel.
Can't be.
Well, if there is, I mean, if there is a question, we can move into executive, or,
I'll ask John.
okay.
It's not gonna change anything.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. May I have a motion for the approval of the updated athletic health and safety plan as per the attachment? Motion second, you got that, Julie? Rosemary and Jack. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Yeah, I'm opposed. I can't agree to anything.
So we have Brian and Jack opposed on that, Julie. So with 2 opposed, the motion carries. Please note in the minutes that policies listed 1 through 21, as listed, are under review. And now we'll move on to Dr. Bell's presentation.
Okay, hello again, everybody. This presentation will be a little different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've been in the process of taking all this information and funneling it down into objectives and options. What this is actually an informational presentation to educate the board and the public about what's going on in all these different facets of the district prepping for opening day. And you'll see it's transportation, food service, facilities, et cetera. So there'll be a variety of us that are going to speak just to certain slides, just as for informational, so everybody will know what's going on and some of the upgrades, new things we've done, changes we did because of the pandemic and things like that. And each time we get to a new person, you'll see I put the person's name in small print in the header in case people at home don't know who it is. They may not recognize the faces and things of that nature. So basically what's in this presentation, there'll be some health and safety information from the various different cabinet directors. I'll share the results with you of what the parents chose for their students, for their learning options. And then again, at the end, I'll just review some of the reopening information that's on our website so that people know where the go-to place is to see everything. So right now I will pass it to Chris Lordi, who's going to take us through slides 3 and 4.
Good evening, everybody. At the very beginning of this process, PDE provided us with a template back starting on June 3rd. From that date, we've basically been working nonstop using this template that they have updated on a weekly basis. It started with the IU and the Department of Health, which I was on the phone 3 times a week, going over different safety plans, and putting policies and procedures in place that we have adopted. The IU took the lead on this and really kind of wanted to have about 80% of the districts have about, pretty much have the same game plan going into the process. The other 20% would be adopted for what we did for our specific needs, which we did. And you guys adopted on August 6th. It's a 42 pages in length.
Chris, can you pause for 1 second?
Sure.
Thanks. We're just trying to figure out the sound. Is that the smart
I
boards?
think the smart board sound is on. Yeah, no, I agree
Yeah,
with
can
that.
we turn that smart board down? Want to make sure everybody can hear everything. Is that better? Let's try that. All right, let me turn this one up. All right, Chris, I think we're good.
You'd like me to start over or just keep
You
going
can
here?
just continue from where you were.
Okay, so like I said, we did approve this as a school board on August 6th. We submitted as required to PDE, and it has been on the website under the reopening plan that Dr. Bell has presented. Next slide. In getting prepared for our reopening, we kind of broke it down into teams as we all have, our specific information that we're experts in. And we broke it down to facilities, transportation, food service, and human resources. We kind of broke into a small group. The elementary People kind of broke into their own group. Secondary and athletics broke it down into their areas. In technology, Vicki kind of worked with everybody, just as that was her expertise. Once we met as small groups and kind of worked and honed our plans, then we kind of put it all into one plan, which was adopted from there. Really, each cabinet member will provide their own input. And now we'll move to Marvin with facilities.
I hate it up here. Good evening. In preparation for the reopening, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems were serviced. Everything from power washing the units on the rooftop to clear dirt from the louvers, motor fans, fins, and things like that. All filters were changed in all buildings. Dampers back in the spring were adjusted so that they were open for fresh air on a 24/7 basis. That continues. In the same area, we're performing fresh air quality tests that we do every summer to make sure that the air meets standards. Those results will be in the next few days. And one of the things that came up Tuesday night was the ability to create negative air pressure in the nurse's office areas. We can do that in all buildings through the HVAC system programming and controls that we have. Moving on to cleaning. I'd like to give you a couple of definitions that we work by. Cleaning is removing of dirt. Sanitizing is removing of germs and bacteria. And disinfecting is killing virus. We've been focusing on disinfecting now for about over 2 years. It started in the PE building where we had athlete's foot and other fungus problems. So we invested in the first generation of the Vicki spray applicators. And so we've been using that for over two years over there and trying to keep ahead of the curve a bit. Late last year, well before COVID, I started buying the second generation of Vicki spray applicators for each building. And we started disinfecting using it. Couldn't do the entire building every night, but we did sections. We do a room or two, particularly if it was reported to us that there was a sickness. And then when COVID kind of moved in on us in February, we started doing more intense disinfecting in all buildings. Again, not able to do the entire building at night, but we were chipping away at it. The plan for this year is to do our traditional night cleaning and sanitizing of all buildings, which we've been doing for decades, and then focused on disinfecting. A couple programs there. The program that we had last year is going to be continued but enhanced. That a little better? So I'm going to add, take a night custodian and add a second custodian to the day shift so that the regular day shift custodian can do his normal routine, and then the second person would spend his time disinfecting hard surfaces throughout each building with a spray and wipe procedure. And once we got through the building, we just repeat the process and keep going. They will also help at lunchtime, getting the tables disinfected between lunch periods. At night, we'll do our normal cleaning and sanitizing, and then all custodians will be working extra every night to disinfect the entire building. On average, it takes about 8 hours to do that. So if you have a 4-person building, at least be working a couple hours over every night until this thing calms down. In terms of materials that we passed out to the buildings, we've provided half-gallon and gallon hand disinfectant containers with pumps, 8-ounce containers for every classroom teacher, individual packets of disinfectant handy wipes for every classroom, and we have an inventory. A lot of people don't. The last significant piece in terms of trying to be prepared for reopening is what we refer to as sneeze guards. Sneeze guards are made of what is better known as plexiglass, and they have 3 legs on them. We're planning on placing them, we've already placed a lot of them, but placing them on each cafeteria table, which really doubles our capacity to use the table. Before, because of social distancing, we could only use one side of the table. Now with a sneeze guard in the middle, you can use both sides, which enhances our ability to get people seated. We're also have already furnished like special ed during the ESY program this summer. They had the sneeze guards. We're making more for the coming school year for special ed. All of the offices either have them or we'll be making them in the next few days. There's several hundred of them that we're making. It does take quite a bit of time, but we'll be ready for opening day. I'm going to combine staffing with that. I just went over it, and I'm going to double up during the days and then work extra hours at the end of the shift.
Marvin, before you go on to transportation, I just wanted to highlight a few things. I don't know if you got a chance to mention this or not, but we've spent over $1 million upgrading the HVAC system over the last 6 summers. And again, he said that we've done the disinfecting, deep cleaning this summer of our entire HVAC system, from the rooftop units through the ductwork, the louvers, everything. That's not something we've done in my 8 years here, to do an extensive cleaning like that. So that's a big deal from a health perspective. And a lot of districts are, if they're doing an alternating day schedule, they're doing it, say Wednesday is their swing day. That's the day they're disinfecting their schools. I don't know if you heard Marvin say, but we're going to disinfect our schools every single night to try to give us as successful a start as possible. It's a huge undertaking, manpower wise, woman power wise, people power wise, and it's also expensive. But we just think if we want to get off to the best start we can, so doing disinfectant every single night is the way to go. So I'll turn it back to you, Marvin.
Okay,
Can I
thank you.
ask one question?
In the area of
There was a question about the products being used for the disinfectant, especially during the day and the dry time. Was that all settled?
Yes, I checked with Marvin, and we actually don't use those. So we're going to clarify that with the group that asked.
Right. Is that it? Okay. In the area of transportation, there's some unknowns that we're trying to get a grip on, and that is how many kids are going to be riding and how many students that rode last year are going to ride this year, and on contrary, how many aren't going to ride. And we're using a couple different sources for that. One is the parent survey. That says about 22% reduction in ridership. And all of that is about targeting 2 students per seat. We've had meetings with both Roar Bus Company and internally with the DV drivers and aides about wearing face masks and how to handle the students as they board. We're going to try to board back to front, with the exception of kindergartners. We're going to try to keep them in the front of the bus. If that 22% reduction in ridership holds true, we'll have no problems. If it, let's say, only drops to 10%, then I'm going to have to start moving stops from bus to bus and kids from stop to stop, kind of thing. So the first week is going to be the trial and error, and we'll work through it the best that we can. Another thing that I'm doing is the first few days of the first week of school, starting the 31st, I've asked Roar to have all the supervisors, trip drivers, and athletic trip drivers, subs available, 2 in Matamoros, at least 3 in Dingman's. So if, let's say, bus A gets to the last stop and he or she is going to be 6 students over 2 per seat, she can radio in. We'll get us one of those empty buses to shuttle out to that stop, pick up those 6, maybe some others along the way, and bring them back to school so that we can try to manage to that 2 per seat target. As last year, we'll be disinfecting the buses. We're going to start out disinfected, fresh, and then at the end of the morning runs, we'll disinfect again. And at the end of the evening runs, afternoon runs, we'll disinfect again. If there are sports trips, which we don't know yet, maybe by tomorrow we will, we'll be disinfecting them in a like manner so that when they start out, they're disinfected. Each bus has been equipped with hand sanitizers and the hand disinfectant wipes.
Thank you, Marvin.
We did a little bit of this last year, but we're going to try to have the windows open as long as the kids remain disciplined about it, so we get fresh air circulation through the bus. And you know, I think we've covered all those bases through the meetings that we've had. And with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Bell.
Thank you, Marvin. All right, next up will be Vicki McNeely, our Director of Elementary Ed and Technology, who will tell us a little bit about the elementary schools.
Okay, great. As Chris mentioned earlier, we met in various groups over the summer. We were meeting pretty much once a week with the 4 elementary principals, myself, and Cheryl Nielsen, who is handling elementary special ed. We sat down and tried to go through everything we could think of to help minimize students near each other, across from each other, passing each other in the hallways. We started with arrival and dismissal procedures for each building. I do have those posted on the web under the reopening, the button at the bottom. I encourage parents to look at that because there are some changes for each building as to how students are going to be dropped off and doors that they will be going into, so that we don't have crowds all entering one door. We're going to try to utilize as many entrances and exits as we can. Classrooms, I walked all the classrooms with each of the principals to try to figure out what our, well, when spacing has changed multiple times over the summer over how far they want them apart, but we did the best that we could with numbers to try to make sure the desks, you know, they're don't look like traditional elementary rooms. You know, they're not in groups or tables. They are in rows and desks, but, you know, we want to make sure that the kids are safe, so they are all facing in one direction. Special areas where they can will go to the classrooms to obviously other than phys ed to hold that subject, again, to keep the number of kids in the hallways and movement down a little bit. Lunch, each principal created cafeteria and hallway procedures in each building. Obviously, with the sizes and shapes of those buildings, the procedures may be different in each building based on the width of the hallways that we can make one way, entrances and exits again, and where we can put extra tables. But they've done a great job of figuring out how many kids can fit. We are using alternate spaces so that kids can, you know, be apart and have their masks off. For some of the younger grades, we're using dots on seats so they know don't sit here. The principals have done a great job with putting those procedures together, and they should be out in the building so that, you know, everyone is aware. The cafeteria personnel has done an awesome job in working with those principals as well to do whatever needs to be done so that, you know, we can get the kids in and out with minimal touching of things. Recess schedules were looked at to keep as the smallest number possible at any one given time. If there are multiple classrooms out there, again, depending on the school, they're going to be assigned to an area as opposed to, we usually just let them run around and visit with friends. But if there's 3 classes out, Class A will be in one spot, Class B will be in the second spot, Class C will be, in the third spot. So we did our best to try to think of everything. I'm sure we'll be adjusting as we go after week 1, but I think we're off to a good start.
Vicki, just one question, and this might be Vicki, Dr. Bell. With Schoology now, what are we doing parent orientation wise, parent training, resource materials, things along those lines for that element?
Jump in my slide. I can jump to the technology slide if you'd like. That's fine.
That's all right. You come back later on. Okay, I'll ask you then.
And like Vicki said at the beginning, the changes for arrival and dismissal are posted on the district website under the reopening information, but they're also posted under each individual elementary school. So if you have students just going to one elementary, you can look there to see what's the same and what's different at your individual elementary school. Again, we're just trying to use more doors and have less kids all bottlenecked going through the main entrance and stuff like that. Okay, moving on to secondary schools, Dr. Brian Blaum will speak about what's happening with the middle schools and the high school.
Good evening, everyone. Similar to elementary for arrival and dismissal, our main goal is to alleviate as many congested areas as possible in the morning. So one of the biggest changes we're going to be making to arrival is not having any large areas that students can congregate in large groups. So students will report to homerooms at 7:42 in the morning as opposed to 7:50. When it comes to dismissal procedures, different grades will have staggered dismissal times to avoid large areas getting together in the hallways or in the parking lots of both campuses. For our halls, we are going to stagger our dismissals for each individual period, where half of the alphabet will dismiss 2 minutes before the bell. The remainder of the class will dismiss at the normal bell, and that will hopefully relieve some of the congestion, particularly in the high school where it'll be worse. We are also going to have 3 designated times where students can use their lockers during the day. The rest of the day, they will be carrying their materials to and from classes. So they will be able to go before first period, during 5th period, before or after lunch, and then at the end of the school day. Our classes, we measured rooms to try to find numbers that will allow social distancing as best as possible. We are trying to maximize the space that we have throughout the buildings in order to alleviate some of the larger classes that exist at the secondary level as best as humanly possible. We also took a look at individual schedules and attempted to balance as best as possible. If there was similar sections of classes that had different numbers in them, we tried to get those numbers as close as possible to each other in order to make them as small as possible. For lunches, because of the large number of students, the Dingman Delaware Middle School is going to have a different look where they're going to use folding tables because they will be able to get more students in that way while maintaining 6 feet of distance. They'll have some alternative locations for some of their larger lunches as well. Delaware Valley Middle School has a larger cafeteria that they will be able to fit their classes in, and they will also allow outdoor seating as well as using their vestibule if they need extra spots. For the high school, we're looking into using outdoor seating, including 2 20 by 40 tents when the weather allows. When the weather does not allow, using interior locations such as the gymnasium, different entry points of the school in the new gym area, around the pool entrance, and possibly around the auditorium as well, in order to keep students as separated as possible with the numbers that we have to deal with. In terms of CTE and electives, those programs are ready to go. Right now, we're working with department chairs and individual teachers to find the most effective way to Zoom those classes that are not traditional in terms of the instruction that is offered. And then with athletics and other co-curricular activities, fall sports are scheduled to start on Monday, with the exception of football, which is delayed. And co-curricular activities will be offered as possible.
All right, now we'll talk about special education and student services, and I'll turn it over to the supervisors.
Could I ask Brian a question?
Sure.
Yeah, Brian, I'd like to say to you and to everybody, thanks for all your hard work, reviewing every classroom, every hallway, every cafeteria, every music room and so forth to see how we can spread students out. Ideally, we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to practice the standards of social distancing. And I appreciate all the administrators and principals worked on these maps that give us some indication of what can be done. You mentioned social distancing as much as possible, given the numbers that we have of students coming into the building under a 5-day plan. Could you be more specific? Are we able to socially distance students 6 feet apart in the classrooms of the high school?
With the high school in particular, no, we will not be able to social distance for every period of the school day.
All right, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Cheryl and Diana.
Can I ask them a question?
Oh, hold on, ladies. Sure, go ahead.
Dr. Blaum, you mentioned tents. Since 7.5 years I've sat on this board, we've designed safety to keep students inside. So I'm concerned about, I know we send some children out for physical education, recess, things like that. How many children will we be sending out for these students? How many students will we be sending out at a time to go into these tents?
With social distancing standards that we have in place, including the outdoor seating that we already have in place around the high school, both for 9, 10, and 11, 12, we're at roughly between 72 and 96 right now.
72 and 96 children at a time outside.
Yes.
Because that kind of goes against what we've been designing here for 7.5 years that I've sat here, as far as safety of children. School shooters, they didn't take the week off. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not happy with that.
Brian, so I know our physical education classes go outside for gyms, but at any given time, how many physical education students would be outside?
How many classes will be outside?
Yes.
In good weather, almost every phys ed class would be outside when they can be. So between 5 and 7 per period.
And if you have 25 students in a class, so you're talking well over 100 students
That
are
is
normally outside at any given time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Brian, when they're outside, they're with their physical education teacher, right?
Yes.
And teachers have different lunch periods than students. Is that correct? So the teachers are not out with their students?
That
You
is
have lunch
correct.
personnel out with the students?
We will have school personnel with the students that are outside eating, which we currently do as well with the outdoor seating. We always have a teacher with those students.
All right, because what I heard the other night was the teachers have their contractual lunch at a time different from the students.
That is correct. What we do when we build our schedule is that teachers that have a 5th period coverage will generally get assigned to lunch coverage. If we have, for example, 3 teachers available for lunch coverage, we would put 1 outside and the 2 inside so that all students are supervised at all times.
Okay, so now we have 3 teachers out there with 75 kids. Is that correct?
We would probably have 1 or 2 outside and then 1 or 2 inside, depending on where the larger number is.
Okay, so now we have 1 per 75 or 2 per 75, which is 37 and a half.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions before I introduce these guys? I don't want to strike out on a third attempt here, so I'm going to foul this one off and see if anybody has any other questions.
Yeah, I have one other one. Do we have gym classes at the same time as lunch classes then?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so now we've got a lot more kids outside the building.
That-
We already have kids a lot outside the building, according to Jessica's question, and now we're putting even more out there. Thank you.
Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Cheryl Nielsen and Dr. Diana Bixby to discuss special ed and mental health.
Thank you, John. Diana and I have been working very closely together this summer. planning for students to return. Throughout the process, we have focused on the fact that students need routine and consistency while balancing academics, health, and safety. Since the beginning of the closure, we have participated in various webinars related to supporting special education students in virtual learning environments, transitioning back to school after the COVID closure, in addition to other related webinars. We have been collaborating with our colleagues from IU20 Weekly since March to discuss the latest information from PDE and the Department of Health. We each sat on our respective reopening committees to ensure that special education students' needs were addressed. Our school psychologists came in over the summer to complete any initial assessments and early intervention assessments that were delayed due to the COVID closure. IEP teams met over the summer to ensure early intervention transitioning students have programs in place for the new school year.
Am I on? Okay. We also started transitioning many of our students back through extended school year. We had this of the students who qualified, 70% of the students came to our extended school year. So we gave parents the option of choosing Zoom or coming in person. 20% of our students chose to come through Zoom and 80% came in person. Our staff was provided with PPE and also the health and safety plan. We followed that. There was enough room in the classrooms. Therapies were also provided. They were provided in person if possible, and they were also provided through Zoom if not possible. We're going to continue next through the school year with the therapies in person if possible, and Zoom if needed. Therapists will go into the classrooms if possible, and they will also be pulling students out if needed. And students will still continue to be pulled for small group instruction in their IEPs. And one of the big things, one of the big questions that comes about is everything is individualized. So a lot of the questions are based on the individual students and the IEP team decisions. So we're going to look at each child's program, and the IEP team will meet to discuss what changes need to be made to their specially designed instruction and any other revisions that need to be made.
A letter went home to parents this week to communicate the potential for the IEP revisions based on parent choice of the learning platform for their child. Any changes, again, that will take place will all be individualized based on IEP team decisions. We have been talking to parents throughout the summer, answering any questions that they have regarding health and safety concerns for their children, as well as program concerns. Kelly, our educational consultant, has been putting together resources for teachers as students are going to need help adjusting to the new normal at school. She's also working on putting together in-services and workshops for staff and parents for the new school year. We have been in communication with teachers throughout the summer, answering any questions that they have regarding reopening.
At the high school this summer, we offered tours for freshmen coming in who are transitioning from the middle school. And Dr. Pope, who's the assistant principal for special education, and myself began the tours and answered any questions that people had. And Dr. Pope also has had many other tours that I was not available for. So we did that to transition students going into 9th grade. This is something I had done before at the high school, so it was a system that was easy to restart. The goal next year is to transition our middle school students in that way as well over the summer. But this year, if there are any middle school parents who have children that have an IEP going into 6th grade, please call the office and we can help with individual concerns for this year as well. The next hat that I wear is helping with mental health initiatives in the school district. So our core team of the Whole Child Committee, which consists of myself, Amy Latwinsky, Vivian Garcia, our school social workers, and Lynn Communal, Department of Guidance. We've been meeting really all through the spring to talk about mental health and how to support our students and staff. We recently had a meeting with every school psychologist via Zoom last week, and I was very impressed. It was a voluntary meeting. Everyone came and we talked a lot regarding creating our mental health reentry plan. So that isn't completed yet, but we have a lot of ideas. One of the things we're doing is all staff are going to be trained next week in the beginning of trauma-informed practices to help students and to help teachers support students who have been through trauma and a lot of issues with COVID-19. The IU is providing the training, and they're also going to be providing additional trainings throughout the year for teachers who are interested. So we're really excited about that. There's also going to be a committee, voluntary committee that's going to meet monthly to revise the mental health plan, to look at what we need to do, how we need to improve our groups, any other resources that we have. The last thing, in addition, I met with Friendship House last week. They come in and help with therapies, and we had a great session with all the counselors and one of the directors, and they will be coming and helping provide even more help as we need it, even telehealth that they may provide. So we do have a lot of things that we're looking forward to, and the safety of our students and their mental health is important. So I'm excited about some of these initiatives to come.
Okay, any questions for Cheryl or Diana?
Just one. Special education students are really one of the more vulnerable groups with this whole situation, as far as learning and scaffolding, everything along those lines. Since you've been working with parents and students, how's the anxiety level been? That kind of touches on special education and mental health. So it's something I think a few of us board members worry about.
Corey, can you repeat that? I'm sorry, we didn't hear
We
you.
can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Since you've been working with the parents and students and special education children with their IEPs, things along those lines, how's the anxiety level been amongst students and parents with this transition back into the classroom?
I think, for speaking for the secondary, I think it varies. We've had a lot of parents call, and we just try to help them with individual concerns. The big thing is that there's no one specific answer. We are going to make accommodations for students, whatever it takes that we need to do to help the students be successful. So I think it's really helped our communication with the parents this summer.
I have one question. How many IEP students and students with 504 plans do we have at the secondary level?
The IEPs, the secondary level, there's 501 with both middle schools and the high school. 504s, I'd have to get that information for you.
And at the elementary level?
There's between the 4 elementary schools, there are around 350 IEPs, and I don't know about chapter 15s. I have to get back to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
That was for secondary.
Mrs. Bixby,
Yes.
I'm looking at the numbers here of the children that will not be attending school, and it's quite a lot. So for whatever reason, they're home, and each family has a different reason. But those children are now removed from their peers, their teachers, their classroom. I know we worry about the mental health of the children that are in school. What about the mental health of the children that are home?
We talked a lot about this throughout the last couple months. We're talking about doing groups for students at home, individual students. While we were off in the spring, students actually got counseling we did some telehealth counseling as well. We talked about doing some social groups as well, because students are missing out on things. And I know the case managers in the spring, and I'm sure I can say the same for, Cheryl could say the same for elementary. They're checking in a lot with the parents and students. So we have recommended outside agencies, you know, in the spring. We've done a lot of different things that way.
It's kind of just hard to judge, and certainly the children are free from any fault here. So I do wonder, because we do have a lot being home isolated. I mean, at least in my family, I have 2 daughters home, but I hear a lot of families that have only 1 child. So I do kind of worry about that. You know? So thank you. It's just something we got to keep an eye on. Not just the students here, but the students that are home. They're all our students.
Definitely, and we've done a lot of things besides mental health. We've had teachers help families with a lot of outside things, because just to help the families when we were off in the spring. So there's a lot of check-ins, and we'll do whatever we need to.
Well, I know we have great staff here that easily identifies these issues when the student is here. It's just more cumbersome for our teachers, our educators, to identify issues when the child is not physically in front of them. It's just going to be another thing added to your plate.
Yes.
So, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on special education or mental health? All right, then we're going to turn it back to Vicki so she can wear her other hat for technology.
Okay, so it has been a busy last 6 or 7 months for the technology department, from the time that we went out and tried to get everybody online, which I think we did a pretty good job of doing. And we got our kids up and running. And I think we did the best we could that allowed the teachers and everybody to actually be working rather than sitting home. So since then, my department and I have been working all summer on plans to get Chromebooks. We were lucky enough to get some additional Chromebooks through grant money over the summer. So that first slide talks about Chromebooks and a one-to-one initiative. So for students who will be Zooming, obviously we will provide anybody who needs a Chromebook. But Dr. Bell and I have been talking about this for the last week, and in light of what may or may not happen in the next few weeks or months, if we end up having to shut down, even if it's for 2 to 3 weeks, we want kids to still be able to work from home. So I've had my staff gathering all of the devices that we have and counting and recounting, and I think we're good to go that we're able to give everybody in the district a Chromebook. So next week from the various schools, we'll be letting parents know how that's going to happen. Basically, the Zoom kids will be getting information on when to come into the various schools. They'll pick up their materials, not only the Chromebook, obviously, but whatever else they need, textbooks. And at that time, we'll get their Chromebooks and any other information that they need. Once school starts, we will be sending home the paperwork that says, yes, I'm getting a Chromebook. And when we get that signed paperwork back so that we know that a parent or guardian did see it, then we'll give the children a Chromebook and they'll bring them back and forth to school like other districts do with one-to-one initiatives. So we hope that goes well. We hope that that's going to give us a leg up if indeed we're out of school for any amount of time so that we don't have to stop education. In addition to that, we were lucky enough to be able to do something with Schoology. Unfortunately, not as much time as I would have liked, but we're getting there. We have had some train the trainer teachers from each building who have attended a live training who will go back to the buildings to help. We have, Dr. Schaefer has posted multiple links to self-paced courses through Schoology for the teachers, which I've done myself and are very good. Enough that, as I've told them, they don't need to be experts from day one. We're using it as a main system where no matter what grade you have a child in, everybody's seeing the same thing for updates, announcements, and assignments. The beautiful thing for the elementary school kids is that we still have ClassLink, which we've had now for a few years. On a Chromebook, they log in, it takes them to a dashboard, and on that dashboard is every program that we use at the elementary level, in addition to an icon for Schoology. Schoology uses our Google logins as well. So because they're already logged in, when they click that, it will take them on. So they don't even have to know how to anything to log in. They'll be taken to their teacher's homepage, and announcements and things will be there. We will be giving teachers information on how to provide parents with an access code, because in order for a parent to create their own account, should they want it, every parent needs a different access code. So the easiest way we decided to do that, because I can't do it district-wide, is to show the teachers how they can just print those out of their roster of kids and give those to the parents who want them. And that's just another means of that. If parent wants to see what a kid's, if they're not logging in as the child, they can see assignments, grades, etc. So I will be posting additional videos, Corey, on the website that are, again, I have to say, and I've done a lot of self-paced videos that I don't think are very good, and the ones that I have been through on their site so far have been awesome. It is really very simple to use. And again, I've tried to stress with the teachers, you don't have to be an expert from day one. You need to know how to put up an assignment, put a link to a Zoom, and say good morning, basically. And we can delve deeper into that as we go, but to get started, it's a great way to start. We've also been able to add ClassLink for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. The 6th and 7th graders in elementary school used it. So again, the beauty part of that program, in addition to that you have all of your programs in one spot, the purpose of it is that you don't need 8 different usernames and passwords like we used to have. As an elementary teacher, you would have the card that had the program and some of them, it automatically logs them in through, not to get too technical, but through Roster Server and PowerSchool, so they don't have to know how to do anything. They log in, the one-time login, boom, they click it, they're in. Other programs, the teacher creates a username and password for them. They only need to log in once. It remembers it as long as they're going in through ClassLink. So it really eliminates the 99, logins that kids have to remember, or myself on my cheat sheet of passwords that we're not supposed to create. So we're hoping that that helps those kids as well, just some ease of use if you're home, that you don't have, you don't have somebody there all the time to tell you, oh my God, I don't remember what my password was. We have been able to acquire webcams, which was a major coup, I will tell you, because they have been back ordered since probably March. So we should have the majority of them by tomorrow. I have some, the rest are due to arrive tomorrow, and we'll be getting those out to all of the classrooms so that the teachers can have them as well. One other thing on the that reopening page for information, both Blue Ridge and Pentella Data are doing, again, for families at home, and I put the links there. Blue Ridge is doing another Learn from Home internet access program for families, in addition to if people are delinquent on current bills. I know that was an issue in the spring. They weren't able to get that because they hadn't paid a bill. There's also a program going for that. And PTD is giving access to community hotspots for free. And there's a link there where they can learn about that. So if you're in an area where, and we well know, so when some of them up in the mountains in Shahola, where, you have to kind of stand on one foot and twirl, depending on where you are, that should hopefully help those parents that are, in areas where their internet is not so good. So if they get on the website, under the district website, under the reopening information, that is all there for them.
I just wanted to add a few more comments. For those that aren't familiar with Schoology or our learning management system, if you have any kids in college, or when people were in college themselves, Schoology is similar to something like Canvas or D2L or Blackboard or Moodle. It's that one repository for information. And as Vicki said, it'll make it very nice for parents because it doesn't matter what grade your kids are in. Now everybody will have their stuff going through Schoology, so they know where to go. And that's a big deal. Regarding the kids that are going to Zoom, and I'll show you that data in a little bit, but the kids that are going to be 100% Zoomers, they're going to be able to go to their schools next Friday, and you'll get information from your individual schools, or you can give the schools a buzz. But next Friday is going to be the day to come in and pick up your textbooks. And if you need a Chromebook, you can sign out a Chromebook at that time too. Teachers come back on Thursday, they'll find out who are their kids that are Zooming, and then they can that gives them Thursday to get everything together to be ready to be picked up on Friday. So if you're a Zoom kid, you'll go in. If you're a high school, you'll go in, your textbooks, we'll have all your textbooks for you. And then if you need a Chromebook, you can sign out a Chromebook. Everybody has to sign documentation because they're personally responsible for it. If they were to damage it beyond repair, then they're responsible for replacing it. So that's why everyone needs to sign. And then Vicki, I think, will we be sending forms on opening day?
Yes.
Everybody else?
For the in-school students, yes. We will be sending the form home first, and hopefully we get them all back the next day so we can start giving the kids them out to take home.
So once the parent signed form for the Chromebook comes back, then your child can be given their Chromebook to use for the whole school year. And that'll involve all that cross-germination of people using different Chromebook. Everybody will have their own. So that will be really good. Every one of them has a serial number. Every one has a barcode. They'll all be scanned out to you, and then you'll bring it back and scan it back in. And so that there won't be any doubt that it's yours or anything like that. So any other questions about technology for Vicki?
I have two. One, with the Chromebooks, I know many of our textbook series, you can access the books on the Chromebook.
Mm-hmm.
So will the kids still be required to bring their textbooks to class, or can they utilize the textbooks through the Chromebooks once they receive them?
I would say, honestly, that depends on the individual teachers and how they want them to handle that. You know, some of the programs are better than others. I know the elementary ones, what we have now, are very good. We've had some in the past, like with reading, where they only had part of the story. The current series that we have has all of it. I couldn't speak to middle school or high school, so I would say that probably would be dependent on how they want to do that, but it's there for them if they, if they need it. Yeah.
And my other question is that are we considering doing, I know that there's a self-paced training that parents can go on for Schoology, but are we considering possibly doing, whether it be a question and answer or something to help educate parents whose children are Zooming at home?
I can certainly do that. Once we get into school, I'm just trying to get, everything going, but I can absolutely certainly do that. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Jessica kind of stole one of my questions.
Good.
Yeah, I think, what we learned in, the last several things is, if you send them to an asynchronous course and say, take this, it's tough.
Right.
But, you're there live and you do a Zoom or something and share your screen and walk them through it. It's been extremely helpful. So I'll just throw that out there as a recommendation.
Nope, I will most certainly do that. As I said, I'm really just trying to get all the kids and the teachers and everybody ready to go.
Totally get it. Just give it to Dylan. It's fine.
He may disconnect me.
And then the Zoom links. So the Zoom links are going to be embedded within Schoology?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so just so, parents out there know too, that helps with identity verification as well. So the students only get to that link through their login that we assign.
Correct.
So then, minimize people bombing in there and things along those lines too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And last comment I had on that was, are we looking now with Schoology, since we have an LMS, of different third-party providers with content such as McNeely and Launchpad and things like that with teachers? Or is that more down the road? I'd imagine?
Well, we will be. We have added some apps that the teachers have asked for. The problem is most of them, if we haven't already purchased it, they're there, but you can't use them because they require you to purchase things. So, moving forward, certainly, but they still have access to, things through Google Drive. So from within Schoology, you can access things that they were using in the spring with Google Drive and extensions like Cami. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it allows you to, work on a PDF. So through your Google Docs or Google Drive for the upper level kids, they can still utilize all of those things and bring it right into Schoology. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say too, from the board level, I think we all, appreciate all the work you all did during the spring and this transition now. And, you were new to the role and stepping into it. So
It was
thanks
definitely
for all
trial
your
by fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Mrs. McNeely, I apologize. I had to run out and get better glasses, so I may have missed it.
That's right. I've had mine on and off all night.
Yeah, I brought the wrong ones in with me. When a child is sitting home Zooming, how do they learn the Schoology? Is this?
They don't actually have to learn that. They're good, as I said. So what they use in elementary school. So for an elementary school kid, I'll just start with, because that's the easiest. When they log into the Chromebook, it takes them to a dashboard called ClassLink. On there is their Reading Wonders, is their Generation Genius for Science, is their Go Math. There's an icon for Schoology. All they do is click that, it automatically logs them in. They're brought to a screen that is where their teacher has where they can just read the announcement and say, today we're going to do, and there'll be a link for Zoom there. So, it will be a learning curve, maybe of a day or two till everybody gets a handle on how we're doing it, but they would click that link and they'll be live with the teacher who can then explain everything else. Their work isn't going to necessarily happen in Schoology. That will be where they can post assignments, or this is our schedule for the day. But at that point, the teacher's going to say, okay, go back to ClassLink and click on Reading Wonders or click on Go Math, and this is what we're going to be working on today. Remember, they're also going to have those textbooks and those workbooks at home. So they're not necessarily that they have to work online on those, because they'll have the physical books with them. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, will we be sending something home for the parents so that the parents can help them get on, something?
Yes.
When we hand out the Chromebooks, I know you put.
Yes, I'm not sure if you were here when I said we'll be putting up some basic login information and some basic self-paced stuff on the website. And then moving forward, once I've got all the kids and teachers going, we'll do something a little more in-depth for parents. But initially, there'll be enough for them to be able to get in. Teachers can give them access codes if they want to create their own account. They don't have to. They can just, when the kids log in, look at what they're doing. But enough so that we can get started. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure, no problem.
Any other questions about technology? All right, now we're going to have Dr. Peg Schaefer, the assistant superintendent. First, she's going to talk about food service. She'll be filling in for Justin Roselli, and then she'll be jumping to something that she loves so much and spends about 23 and a half hours a day on, called human resources. So I'll turn it over to Peg.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I just want to give a shout out regarding Schoology to two fantastic, phenomenal teachers, Joyce Sweller and Lori Osipinski, who have really taken the charge with doing additional professional development for our faculty on Schoology. They have offered multiple sessions this month, and I really am so appreciative. So thank you, ladies, very much for your help. So regarding food services, the first biggest change will be that we are going to a cashless system at the registers with the students. All students can still bring money in a sealed envelope. There are locked drop boxes that Marvin's folks have put together at the entryway of each cafeteria. Students may drop money in there with their name on that and hopefully their student ID number to make sure it gets into the right account. We are strongly encouraging parents to log into School Cafe and set up accounts for your students and provide funds that way versus bringing money to school. That will certainly help to ensure that the funds get into the students' accounts. The reason we're going cashless is so that we don't have to do an exchange of money at the register for multiple reasons. Number one, just handing over money back and forth, but also so that we could speed up the lines. Students will all be given either a card similar to what they do with a QR code on the back of it. That's the way the elementary schools have been doing it for years. But on the secondary level, we have not. Students will be able to, if they have a cell phone, download the QR code and use that to scan into their account to purchase meals. Or they can have a card printed in the libraries, and those cards will be used just similar to what we do on the elementary to go through the line, quickly select their items, and then scan as they go through the line. We will be using social distancing as much as possible to separate the kids as they're going through the line. And we have great thanks to Mr. Roselli and his staff with coming up for a plan for grab and go lunches. They are going to be using either bag lunches, disposable trays. We already have lunches and our salads that on the secondary level that are in containers. So they'll be continuing that process so that if students are coming into the cafeteria to get their meals, they don't have to go back through a line to drop off trays to be cleaned and so on. It's not ideal environmentally, but under the circumstances, it's the best solution for serving hundreds of meals every day. So any questions on food services? Also, one thing I would like to mention that the federal government removed the offer versus served. So everyone will be served a full nutritious meal just to make sure that we're meeting all the nutritional guidelines. We will not be going through where kids are picking out certain items again to try to make sure that we are swiftly moving through the lines and not holding people up.
Yeah, Dr. Schaefer, earlier today I was on a sort of conference call with some food pantries, local and local church people that are involved with, they feed a lot of our children. So the question they had for me was, the children that are on the free and reduced lunch program that are at home, they kind of want to know what they have to prepare for. Will those children be getting the free and reduced lunches? How will they be getting it? And do you need their help in distribution?
We will continue similar to what we did in the spring. We will have, the schools will have the availability to have specific pickup times. It will not be the extension time, but it'll most likely be from 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning. But that will again go home with the first day flyer for anyone that is home. Those parents will be able to come to the school and pick up those meals for their children during designated hours.
Okay, so the concern of this one priest in particular was that the family may not have the means to get to the school to get the lunch. So he's not saying the school has to deliver it. I don't know what our legal contractual obligations are there, but they certainly said they wanted to know if transportation was needed, how could they be of service?
That's great to know. And certainly we will work with families once we get a handle on who would like the meals and so on, whether or not we go back to dropping off at central locations, which is what we did in the spring with our van drivers. Our transportation staff was fantastic. If volunteers and so on, we would have to coordinate that to make sure of all the legalities and volunteers and so on. But we certainly could work something out if need be. But our transportation department last spring were really fantastic at assisting us through those midday runs and getting them out to specific developments and so on.
Okay, and last question. Over the summer, we gave out lunches to every child, regardless of whether they were on the free or reduced lunch program.
Correct.
Are we still continuing that?
We are not. At this point, they can purchase meals. There is a bill pending in the federal government to extend free meals to all, but that has not yet occurred. So
Okay, the reason I asked that is maybe they didn't qualify before, but I'm certain, at least the Zoom parents that I talk to, a lot of them are giving up work to stay home with their children. So they may not have qualified while they were working, but certainly now they probably qualify. So How do
Um,
they go about updating their qualifications?
Every year, the free and reduced lunch application goes home on the first day of school with the first day packet. Also, there's a link on our food service page for those applications. It's a direct certification. They don't have to turn those applications back into us. So if you go to the Delaware Valley School District webpage, you go under departments and then food services. There's a link there for the application. It automatically goes into the federal government. That automatically triggers a report to Mr. Roselli and his staff, and automatically those students would be placed on the free and reduced. Generally, it starts October 1st. So it is very important that anyone that would like to apply for that, they can do it right now. They don't have to wait till the first day of school.
Okay, thanks. I told them to tune into YouTube tonight because I knew this was going to be a lot of stuff. So hopefully they got all of that, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Dylan, you can go to my favorite subject. We are continuously trying to finalize staffing. This has been an exceptional year for multiple reasons. Obviously, in the spring, generally, we have retirements and so on. And those were all finalized probably by early June. We have additional staff now that you've approved tonight for FFCRA child rearing leaves. We have additional folks taking leaves without pay. We have other people in the pipeline that are potentially taking medical sabbatical leaves. So I would request, and I'm sure John's going to bring this up later, that we may need to do an additional meeting next week, as was suggested at our last the meeting a few weeks ago, for personnel items. I think it would be important that we kind of reserve some time, because I know we have positions that were not filled on tonight's board packet, but in order to open successfully on the 31st, we are going to need to do additional hirings. The principals are actively interviewing now for positions that we know about. We are actively interviewing for positions that we suppose are going to occur. And the union has been wonderful in terms of waiving, both unions have been wonderful, the associations, in waiving the mandated timelines for job postings, so that we can post the positions, try to actively recruit applicants, and then do the hiring in a timely fashion. So they've been really wonderful in helping us with that. Substitutes, my assistant Carol Skrypek has been fabulous in terms of processing substitute applications. Dr. Pope and myself are doing substitute training on Monday and Wednesday morning, just to kind of bring people, we do it every year before the school starts, but we're going to do it again and try to just bring people up to speed, let them know about the changes, the expectations for classrooms, as well as COVID training for them as well. New teacher orientation is on Tuesday. We will be bringing all of our new teachers in and go through our orientation with them, letting them know about certification and ongoing professional development and all of those things. So that day looks fairly normal. Their mentors will be coming in at lunchtime. We will be socially distancing in the commons, the high school library, and providing that orientation program in the morning. The mentors will be coming in and we will have lunch, and then they will go back to their classrooms and buildings to start the process of setting up their rooms and getting familiar with all of the tools and so on in the classrooms. Staff training. Already our 12-month staff members have been participating in the COVID training. We purchased that through one of the grants through the Safe Schools program, and there are multiple modules through that regarding self-care, wearing masks, cleaning your environment, and so on. Those trainings will be held on Friday for all faculty, all instructional faculty. That'll take place. In addition to that, Dr. Bixby also mentioned about the mental health first aid. The IU will be coming in and providing that program for us. All of the K-8 teachers that teach math will participate in our Go Math training, which is our new math facts and programming and computer programming software that we purchased through the First in Math grant that we had gotten last February, and then everything kind of stalled. And our team is that Computer Science for All team has been working throughout the summer, even though we haven't been here. They've been participating in professional development and so on. But that particular math program training will also be held for the mathematics teachers. And then the PLC departments that are K-12 that do not instruct math, or or the high school departments or secondary departments will all be meeting in PLCs to discuss a variety of topics, including getting ready for the school year, Schoology, troubleshooting some of the things that they need. And certainly the building administrators will be participating in those PLC meetings as well. And lastly, school visitors. We are really limiting any volunteers or visitors to the school buildings this year. Obviously, parents will need to come in and drop off paperwork or get touch base with people, but if anyone that coming into the school will come into the main school vestibule, be buzzed in. There will be hand sanitizer there. Anyone coming into the school building must be wearing a mask. If they do not have one, a mask will be provided to them, and they will be pretty much in the main area of the office. If there's a specific meeting or purpose, they will be escorted to whatever the location is for that particular meeting. And otherwise, we're really trying to limit access into the building by anyone. One additional thing, I want to thank very much Mr. Eversdyke and his people and my assistant, Lisa Matarazzo. They did some yeoman's work in getting a hold of PPE equipment for all staff. All staff will be given 2 masks from the school district as well as a face shield. So that way they can decide which PPE piece of equipment that they would like. Also, our school nurses have really done a lot of work in designing their nurses' offices to provide safe areas for our students. And they've asked for additional equipment and materials to reformat what that facility looks like in the nurse's office. So they've really done a fantastic job, and they've put in a lot of extra hours this summer. And the last piece regarding the PPE equipment this summer, when we couldn't get our hands on the face shields and things like that, Bob Curtis and Tom Moran came in over the summertime, and they made us, with our 3D printers, they made us face shields for all of our faculty that were participating in the special education extended school year program. So we were so appreciative, and they really helped us get that program up and running with that PPE equipment that we needed. So I'm really thankful. I'm thankful to all the faculty for everything that they've done to try to help us coordinate and get everything up and going. It has been a push me, pull you in a lot of directions, but we're learning a lot together, and we will get through this. It's DV strong for sure, and I appreciate all the work that everyone's put into it. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Peg on food or HR?
Yeah, Dr. Schaefer, I just got texted and obviously called. It seems those food pantry people and churches understood everything you said, so thank you.
Great, thanks, Jack.
Moving to the next slide, just a reminder about community use of facilities. This is more an informational blurb than anything, a public service announcement. Just a reminder that fall DV ACE classes are canceled. And if you're not familiar with ACE, that's adult and community education. There's no community use of our indoor facilities for at least the first quarter, the first marketing period. So that's things like dance recitals, tricky trays, and things like that, that community organizations use our facilities for all the time. But for the first quarter, to help us be more successful with keeping a lid on the number of people in the building, we won't be doing those things. They can still use outside, like youth soccer, youth football, things of that nature, softball, you saw outside tonight. Those groups can still use the outside, but not inside. There's 3 new pieces of information from the state.
John, I just have
Oh, yeah,
The,
sorry.
The outside field usage, that's contingent upon PIAA and their ruling though, correct?
Yeah, so it's alive now, but it could be gone as early as tomorrow. Who
Right.
knows, right? Thank you for bringing that up. I even wrote it down and forgot to say it. Moving to the next one, there's 3 new pieces of information that have really popped up from the state since the last time we met on August 6th. They've put out some guidance on what they call determining instructional models, and it's based on the level of community transmission in your county. And there's a low, moderate, and substantial transmission. And basically, we're in the low range easily right now. Our county is. You what? Oh, next slide, Dylan. Thank you. And we're in the low level of community transmission in Pike County, which means you can have full in-person or blended. If we were to rise up to a level of what's called moderate, then we would have blended or remote. And then if you rise to substantial, the only choice is remote. So it's kind of similar to our phases 1, 2, 3, but they actually put out metrics for the first time. After not giving us anything for months and months and months, they finally at least gave us some metrics to go by. And that's what they call the instructional model guidance. The other guidance they gave out was what to do based on what kind of outbreak you might have. And again, it's low, moderate, and substantial are the levels of transmission, but they give us guidance of scenarios such as if there's 1 person in a building versus if there's 2 to 4 people in a building who test positive, or 5 or more, and those kinds of things. So again, it gave us guidance that should we get ourselves in a predicament in the fall, we've got some guidance of what to do about it. And then the third thing that came out just the other day, with only about an hour's notice before they went public, that I got got word that something was coming down the pike, and that's even if there is 6-foot social distancing, you can't take your mask off. You still need to wear your mask, even if there is 6-foot social distancing, and that's a requirement, not guidance. There are some examples of times when you can take your mask off, such as when you're seated to eat lunch. And the other one is what they call mask breaks, which we've been talking about for a couple of months now. And mask breaks are if you can make kids 6 feet apart or more, and the mask breaks can last for up to 10 minutes. Now, they don't say how many you can do during a day or anything like that. It's just that it can't be for any longer than 10 minutes, and you have to do your distancing. But you could easily see how a teacher could take kids out to recess and let them sit down in the grass and spread out, take their mask off, relax, whether they do yoga or they look at the dandelions or whatever, so there are ways to do it. Thankfully, there are still exceptions to it, but they have certainly tightened up on the masks. So that's the latest on those 3 bits of information.
Quick question on the guidance. So if something were to happen and it moves to a moderate or severe, at that point, does the board need to take action to move the district there, or does the state come in and the Department of Health mandate that depending on the level?
Right now, they're calling it guidance, but I don't trust them because the way they change the rules so much, I really don't. So we're going to have to really play it by ear. They do talk about the school closing guidance if you get yourself into a situation, which I think you'd be hard pressed not to follow, at least to close. You might be able to sanitize and get open sooner than that if you have the wherewithal. And Marvin's got a great staff, and he was the first one out of the box in March buying everything before everybody else started placing their orders. So we're in a better place there. But DOH will really give us a lot of guidance on what to do, and we trust them. That's not my profession for sure. So I will take their guidance, and they claim to have that the last time I had heard they were around 600 or 700 contact tracers, and their goal was to have 1,000 contact tracers working for DOH by September 1. So that will really help us. As long as testing can happen fast, then we can get it back to people fast. And the faster you do, the quicker you isolate it so it doesn't spread to a larger group of people. So.
And contact tracing is handled by the state, not the county.
Right,
Correct.
right. Because there's only 6 counties that have full-fledged health departments. So therefore, they're hiring everybody on a statewide basis. So.
John, could one building close and not the entire district?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. So if you had an outbreak of X number of people, whether it's students or staff in that building could actually close
Okay.
down. And that was kind of what pushed us. We were back and forth on the pros and cons of the one-to-one. But when this guidance came out, we're like, wow, we could close like that.
Right.
So we need to ramp up with the Chromebooks right away so that we don't have to have those mass distributions and everything like we did last time.
Will we give parents, and I assume either on the website or school nurses potentially, will we be giving parents suggestions, places that they can get COVID tests if they need to at any point?
Yeah, our nurses have that information, and Wayne Memorial provided a list of different places for us that we shared with our nurses, and so they'll be your contact person. One of the things I found recently, though, is there are a number of places in Middletown that can do it in a matter of hours or even a day, whereas that has not been the tradition on our side of the border. So if we
Orange
Urgent Care, Middletown Medical.
You have to make an appointment to do it, but you make an appointment at midnight for the next day, and literally you sit in your car and you wait for the results.
Yeah,
and you get
yeah.
15 minutes.
So, I mean, that's the best news, is that there is, at least locally now, there's expedited services, because, you know, you've all heard stories of people waiting 6, 7, 8 days or whatever by then. Yeah, yeah. So, and then the other thing regarding masks, there are certain situations where students may not wear a mask because of a medical condition or a disability. But if that is the case, they're going to need authorization from a doctor. And it will also require, for a disability child, it's going to require an amendment to their IEP. If they happen to have a 504 plan, it would be an amendment to a 504. But if somebody doesn't have a 504 and is coming in with the doctor's note to not wear a mask, they have to go through the process and get a 504. So it's not just simply, I don't want to wear a mask, or I'm going to get a doctor's note from my podiatrist or something. You know, it's going to be legit, and it's going to go through the IEP or the 504 process, so that we make sure that it's worthy of and not just a personal preference. Okay, now I'm going to give you some data.
John, one question. Do they need that 504 before they remove the mask?
We're going to have a grace period because we couldn't possibly get them all done right away. So if they have the doctor's note, we'll then set the 504 up, the meeting up, and they'll have a grace period where they can do it with just the doctor's note.
How long does it usually take to set up a 504?
Probably depends on how many people come in with a note, you know, because we're leaning on the guidance counselors and the school psychologists. So it's going to be a supply and demand type thing. So, yeah, we could be lucky. If we get bombarded, then it could take several weeks. Okay, next slide, please. Here are the selections across the district, and then we'll drill down with some other slides. But our enrollment currently is 4,372. 3,124 chose in person, 831 students chose Zooming, 212 are in the DV cyber, 131 are in homeschooling, and 74 are in outside cyber. So that gives you some mass numbers, but then we'll dig a little deeper. Okay, Dylan.
John, on the outside cyber, really quick, while we're looking at high level, how did the outside cyber compare to what we budgeted this coming year? Or maybe that's
Joe, did we do 85?
I gotta speak.
We budgeted for 60, so it's currently at 74.
And Bill, when we budget for outside cyber, what do we budget on average? I know each outside cyber is a different cost, but what do we budget for that per student? Do you have that number or approximation?
I'm sorry, the outside cyber?
Yes. Well, I'm going to ask you all three, Bill. So I just got to give you a heads up. I'm going to ask you outside cyber. I'm going to ask you homeschooling. And I'm going to ask you DV cyber.
Right. Well, you want the individual costs?
Yeah, I mean, we budgeted for 60 outside cyber children. You can either tell me what the total cost is and I can divide it by 60, or you can tell me what each student would cost.
Well, the outside cyber, I can tell you that because of the way the state does their formula, an outside cyber, if it's a regular education child, it costs $14,264. If it's a regular ed student, it's $28,119. Or special ed, I'm sorry, special ed students, $28,119. Again, the state, it's just atrocious, but they make us pay by a formula, and we've been working, trying to get them to change that because it's absolutely so much higher. Our DV cyber is in the neighborhood of $4,500 or $4,600 per student. And again, we budgeted for 60 out of district cyber, and currently we're at 74. And the DV cyber, we budgeted for 90, and then we are currently at 212.
Okay, and then homeschooling, Bill?
Homeschooling is, it doesn't cost the district other than reviewing the paperwork, I believe. Is that correct? And the Zoom, of course, is already part of the regular curriculum.
Okay, last question. The outside cyber, I guess it's 28,119 for special education and 14 for regular education. Do we have any idea how many are going to special education versus regular? Because it's almost double the amount.
Currently, there are 60 regular ed and 14 special ed.
Okay, Bill, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, this will drill down a little bit because everybody wants to know how many kids are coming. So of that 3,124 that we said were coming total in the district, here's how it breaks down across the 7 schools. And then, so you'll see total the total enrollment, the number of kids coming 5 days a week in person, and what that percentage is of the total enrollment. You'll see the 3 Dingman schools are in the 60s, and Shahola and the DV schools are in the 70s. But they're all within a few percentage points for the most part. DVES is higher. In DVHS, they're both a little bit higher than everybody else. So that gives you an idea of just what it looks like in school by school. Now, the next slide, I'll just show you a little bit about elementary. So this gives you the 4 elementary schools and how many kids are coming to school in person, how many are Zooming, how many in DV cyber, how many in homeschooling, and how many in outside cyber. So I'll give you a second to look at that. So 3 of them are in the low 300s and Shahola's in the high 200s. Yeah. Yeah, just from Friday, we've added about 30 or 40 students overall, but you see those different pockets. In Shahola, between data I had this morning and data I had when I came back from lunch, we jumped 15 in total enrollment, and I think DV Cyber jumped almost the same number, so they've been busy in Shahola with answering a lot of calls all of a sudden.
15 total enrollment of students just in general coming to the school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the same time that we had a total increase of 15, we had a DV Cyber of 15 too. It may not be the same ones because it's just people calling in, but they both caught me by surprise. The next slide looks at the secondary level learning selections for Dingman, Delaware Middle School, DV Middle School, and DV High School. There you'll see the middle schools are almost the same. They had 360 some students each coming in. And then the high school has 1,141 coming in. So I'll give you a second to take a look at that. Dingman's middle school is bigger than DV middle school, but they had a lot more kids Zooming, which makes their in-person almost identical. So, okay, the next one, this is going to be the number of classes so that you'll get an idea of, and I'm going to turn this over and Vicki's going to walk you through the next next 3 slides for the elementary schools in how we broke up the teachers. We had a marathon meeting yesterday morning. Once we now had all the data at our fingertips of trying to figure out exactly how to break up the in-person, the Zooming, et cetera. One of the things we looked at as we dug deeper is that the younger the kids, the harder it is to do it as a combination class, because it's not your traditional lecture, the picture kindergarten, you know, with moving around the room, trying to help kids with all these different hands-on projects. It's much different than having a history lecture by Dr. Carso, where we could tell him stand at the smartboard, you know. So what we've done is we've created in-person classes and Zoom classes, and Vicki will walk you through what the makeup is of that. And the numbers fell. We were lucky that the numbers fell that way, that it worked. You know, if we would have had a school that only had 3 kids Zooming at a grade level, then it wouldn't be possible. We would have had to do a combination. This will also, doing it this way with the dedicated Zoom classes, because the numbers worked out, this will also help us where you don't have to order as many cameras and you're not stressing the bandwidth of the network, because you're not going to have 70 elementary teachers all on Zoom at the same time. Now you're going to have, you know, a handful. And so I'll shut up and let Vicki go, and she can walk you through.
Keep going. You're doing a great job. Dr. Bell's right. We probably spent 3 hours yesterday looking at numbers and class sizes and number of teachers and how do we make this all work. So Dingman's primary and Dingman's elementary, if you look back at his previous slide, had the largest number of kids that opted to Zoom. So that gave us a challenge. I think 4th and 5th grade at DDES were close to 50 each. 3rd grade was not as high, but because we reduced a section there, that class coming up then presented our, you know, putting us at like 26 kids in a room. So when we went through it all, it was a miracle that it did work out. But what we ended up doing was for kindergarten and 1st grade, we used 1 teacher and made them the Zoom teacher. And then we doled their kids out amongst the other classes. 2nd grade, the number of Zoomers was high, so we did need 2. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, same thing. The numbers were just too high to have 1 teacher be Zoom, because as you know, if you've been on Zoom, you can only see 25 kids at a time. We tried to keep it not over that, and we ended up going with 2 per grade level. So again, those schools are unique in that they're, you know, larger numbers of kids in each building per grade. Okay, Dylan, the next one, if you go to DVES, we were able to do 1 Zoom class per grade. So they traditionally only had, other than 3rd grade, they have 3 sections per grade. So we'll have 2 in person, 1 doing Zoom, except for 3rd grade, they'll have 3, 3rd and 5th grade, excuse me. And they'll have 3 in person and 1 Zoom. Next one is Shahola. And same thing, they'll have that 2 in person, except for 5th grade, which was a large class coming in. Even if it was normal times, they would have been a large group, and they'll have 3 in person and 1 Zoom. In some cases, because we did look at a couple of reading teachers who are elementary certified and have taught elementary, who are going to take over some of those spillover and be the Zoom teacher. I'm going to be meeting with each of the groups individually next week. And I spent a lot of time today with my staff working with the webcams and Zoom and looking at the best way that we think this will work. And I think we came up with some good plans that I can then pass along to the teachers when I meet with them next week. And I'm doing it by school, so we'll be in those small groups. As Dr. Bell said, I think there's a lot of relief on the part of the other teachers who were, you know, with the little guys, when you're trying to work with, you know, the younger ones, and you have kids at home and you have kids in the class, that would have been challenging, and we were able to make this work. The numbers just worked out for right now. So here's hoping, you know, that we're going to do our best, and we hope that parents will give us a couple of days to, work out kinks, but the teachers who have volunteered, I thank them all. I think it's, I love that they stepped to do this. And I know it's a little daunting because it's not anything we've ever done before, but I have every confidence that they will make it work and the kids will be engaged and they'll feel like they're in school. So that's our plan.
Give us a breakdown, and you can email it to us, of the in-person class sizes for each of the buildings, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
The other thing that she had mentioned about reading teachers, with the reduced number of kids in the building, that gave us a little flexibility to steal some of those reading teachers that are elementary certified. So DVES was one. We took one reading teacher, made her an elementary classroom teacher. Shahola, we took one and made her an elementary teacher. And then at Dingman's Elementary, we had a half-time reading teacher that we promoted to full-time as a long-term sub for this year to be an elementary teacher. So it was a way, with the reduction in numbers, it was enough to help us fill the holes so that we wouldn't have too big of class sizes. But it was kind of odd. Not only did the numbers work to create Zoom classes, but it was odd that all three campuses each were able to free up a reading teacher. So once in a while you get lucky that the stars align and all the numbers worked out, both from a standpoint for kids and a staffing standpoint. So it was a long 3 hours brainstorming all the different ways, but it all in all, it really turned out well. And again, like I say, what Vicki said is thanks to the people who are willing to take the risk of Zooming. And I think everybody else is relieved that they're not going to be running around chasing kindergartners and forgetting the fact that the camera's in the front of the room and you're in the back helping kids wash their hands and put the manipulatives away and all the other stuff. So we just got lucky that the numbers really worked out in our favor.
Class sizes differ per school, I'd imagine, because of the different.
Yeah, and they traditionally do. In the budget this year, we moved a third grade teacher to second grade from Dingman's Elementary to Dingman's Primary to adjust for the size. And then you'll see in a DVE, there's 2 grades that are a little bigger than the others, so they have an extra section. Shahol, I think, has gotten to a point now where they're all 3s. The only reason there's a 4 now is because of the Zooming content of it. And we're still working on numbers. They're literally changing by the hour. So in another day or 2, we should have a much better feel because we still have some people opting out of in-person to go to Zoom or DV Cyber and stuff like that. Because people, if they chose in-person, they've had an easier way out than if they chose Zoom first, where they were locked in till October, or if they chose DV Cyber. So I think we'll have a little more, and we built the Zoom classes like that to absorb more. The other thing I wanted to bring up too is that while right now those classes are 100% Zoom and they're a little smaller than the others, but as we think that people may want to go to Zoom, or there might be a medical condition, or if people get scared, we have room to absorb them into Zoom. On the flip side, if a Zoom kid wants to come back, what will happen is they will stay with that teacher. But instead of Zooming into that room, the kids that want to come back will now be the kids in the room. And it will be a combination class of, there might be 10 in the room and 10 Zooming as opposed to 20 Zooming. So they won't have to change their teacher or anything. We'll just modify the class to make it a combo if we have to, if kids are coming back. So this structure, and Mary Ann Olsemer came up with some of the ideas that really pulled it together for us yesterday. Gives us a lot of flexibility if kids are moving one way or the other without disrupting the other classes, which is important too, to keep that, once you get your teacher, that's it. That's like the greatest thing in the world. And you don't want to disrupt that. And we don't want to go to them in January, so this gives us the flexibility we can handle more kids if they Zoom. If Zoomers decide to come back, they can stay with the same teacher and we won't have to disrupt the other groups. So it took a lot of work. If you asked me a week ago, I would have really been still fretting over it, but it's amazing that it did work out for us.
So if we have, I know way back when in July, we had discussed if a student does have to quarantine for 4 days or 14 days, let's say a family member had, test positive or whatever, that they would then be able to utilize the Zoom option from home. So would they then Zoom into the Zoom class if they were home and needed to do that?
Yeah, in this structure, you can't do I'm sick today, can I just Zoom in for that one day type thing? No, you're sick, you'll stay home, just like you always did in the past. But if we had to quarantine somebody, we could say, hey, for the next 2 weeks, you're going to switch from Mrs. Smith to Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Smith's in-person class to Mrs. Jones's Zoom. And then you'll be back in 2 weeks. When you come back to school, you can go back with your teacher. But at least it's better than sending home piles of work with no guidance.
I absolutely agree. I just wanted to make sure that, and I'm speaking
because we're the ones telling them they
absence.
have to stay home for 2 weeks. So we want to make that accommodation for them.
And then if you want to wait until like the beginning of next week about in regards to numbers by class, since it is changing, that's
okay. Thanks.
Not, like I don't need it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah.
John, since we're dedicating Zoom teachers, are they going to be able to have that second device to be able to see all the students while they're sharing their screen?
Yeah, we can do that because we can actually give them if we have to, we could give them a camera and a Chromebook if we need to, so they could have both.
Yeah.
And that's another flexibility that we wouldn't, if we were having all 70 elementary teachers Zooming, now that ties your hands in terms of equipment too. And now we're only having how many Zoomers, a fraction of that. So it gives us more flexibility now to do that.
And at the elementary level, will they record those sessions or we're not recording the Zoom?
The idea is it's going to be just like regular school so that if you miss class, it would be the same. If you miss Zoom class, it'd be the same as missing the in-person class and your teacher will have to get you caught up.
Mr. Hustling, I have a question for you, if you could answer. Are you there?
You have to give them a couple minutes to find them. Go ahead.
All right, sorry, Bill, but in between our last little number there, I ran some numbers here. We budgeted for 90. We have 212 in DV cyber. So I came out with 561,200 on that at $4,600 a student. The outside academy is a little bit more difficult. I first went with a blend, the difference between 14,000 and 28 being 21,000. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think we're going to have half those students in special education. So I went very conservative with that and said that they would all be regular education, best case scenario financially. So that's 196,000. So at this point, we're maybe $750,000, which is a 1 point something tax increase to recoup that money at next year. I know budget's tight, and we did a zero this year because the board didn't feel it was proper to raise taxes at this point. And the administration did a great job in cutting corners, and we got some bailout money. Is any of this $750,000? And again, that's just a really rough estimate. Is any of that recoverable through government assistance funds that are coming our way?
Not to my knowledge, no. The best thing that could happen is if the state legislators would do what they should do, and that is put the cost of the outside cybers at something more reasonable.
Okay, and what my major fear here is that if for any reason the school gets shut down and we go 100% online, at that point, I really can't see a parent that's in cyber, either DV or outside, leaving cyber to come to DV Zoom, because the DV Zoom was an option for them and they chose not to. So if we close, I don't see them coming in. What I do see the potential for, and there's no way of knowing, is what if, whether it's a Zoom child or a student that's now attending our school, if we were to actually shut, would we lose? Well, we're going to lose children at that point students at that point to DV Academy or outside academy. That would almost make sense. I don't know how many we'd lose, but I imagine we would lose some. Overall, what is this impact going to have on our budget?
Well, I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, I just think the community needs to know that Zooming with our wonderful teachers is the best option. Our DV cyber is a second option, which is about $4,500 in it per student. And then if you're a regular ed student, the state forces us to pay $14,264, and for special ed, $28,119. So I think the community and needs to know those costs, and I hope the parents, recognize that too, because they're taxpayers.
Okay, thanks.
And also too, to piggyback about saying about DB cyber, I believe in the secondary level in high school, there's 3, we have college bound, career bound, and special education, correct? So there are 3 options within our own cyber.
There's also, Jack, when we're considering costs, which are really difficult to figure if we were to go full online, but you also then run into having to pay for private school for special eds kids, compensatory education, and things that are just gonna, that will skyrocket much higher than what we have for cyber.
This is why I worry, Dawn. This is exactly why I worry. If we open, the last thing anybody here wants, we may disagree with a lot of things, but the last thing any of us want, if we open, is to close. That's devastating to the community, to the students, to the families. We're the #1 job provider in Pike County. The ramifications of that, that's why I worry about these things.
Okay, Dylan, next slide, please. Just a reminder on this slide about reopening information, you'll see these are the things that are, if you go to our website, Dylan, next slide, please.
Yeah.
It's not on ours. Okay. Okay, as long as they can see it up there, that's good. Looks like I'm frozen up there.
You are frozen. Yeah, he's alive.
There we go. Okay, so, oh, I will wait. We're almost there. This is it. There's only this slide and one more. And then I'll make my plea to bang on your neighbor's door if you know your students.
Mrs. Titus is our host.
He's got her name.
Dylan has Mrs. Titus.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dylan.
All right, give me 1 second.
No, he's not in there. What did he say? Yeah. Oh, okay. Mass break. Oh, that's, yeah. We're still connecting, so we'll just be patient.
We're 2 hours in. We should go for a 10-minute outdoor fresh air grass break.
Jack and Billy started talking finances and it crashed our system.
When Bill retires, he's never going to talk to me again.
He's never retiring, don't worry.
I know.
We're not gonna let him.
Can't lose Marvin either. Who's the replacement there? I mean,
For Chris probably, but yeah.
and I talked to him today about the negative air. I told you he was right on. He was right on point. He knew exactly what I was talking about. He was talking to the engineers. Perfect.
Good time to, if you need a break, good time to make a run for it.
Is it not streaming right now?
No, it was spinning. Plus you guys already have the cheat sheet. Huh? The DV. Our employees are getting those.
My employee actually had, and I have to say, like, no, you know what, I'm not sure, but I woke up, but I have to tell you, it is extremely comfortable. I had one of those on today and night and day. Yeah. Yeah, very comfortable. It's probably because I have really like cheeks right now. So like, wearing the cotton ones that just pulls on my ear.
You're supposed to be responding, lady. The laptop is on. That's why it's not.
Oh, did the battery die or something?
Yeah.
You can move my folder. I was just covering the,
Is that one from me?
I was just trying to cover the volume because it was so loud.
Yeah, sorry. Like the cotton ones, I just keep in my car to like message store and things like that, but yeah. Right. Well, I'm thinking tax season and, you know. Although hopefully we'll have any conversations by then. But it's the, it's one of the, yeah. It's supposed to,
Oh, yes, it's still playing? Lovely. Made face for radio, though. That's the problem. Okay, sorry for that delay. It wasn't the Chromebook and the Zoom call. It was an issue with a laptop and the YouTube. We have 2 slides, just informational slides. They're the last 2 slides left. We paused when we had that issue. This is just a reminder that the go-to place to find anything you need to know about reopening is, it's called Reopening Information. You go to the DV website, www.dvsd.org, and then you scroll down to District News, and the first story on the left is called Reopening Information. And every time we have new information about the reopening, we put it there so that people always know that's the place to go. And this PowerPoint from tonight, August 20th, will be added, actually momentarily, will be added to our website. So again, this will be a new addition to the reopening information. And then the last slide is just a reminder about if you have questions. The first that right now, we're now transitioning from lots of questions that were coming to the district office. Now it's more, we're going down into the weeds of the specifics of how we do things. And that stuff gets decided at the building level. So if you have questions, your first bet is to call the secretaries at your child's school. If it's a special ed issue, you can certainly call the special ed office. Transportation issues, you would call there. Anything about cyber, you would speak to your child's counselor. If you have questions about homeschooling, you'd call Lisa Matarazzo at 296-1827. And then if there are more global type questions, you can go to the Ask DV email address. But again, that would be if you can't get your answer from these other building-based and department-based, then you would your last resort could be the Ask DV if you can't find your answer. I just also wanted to make an appeal to the public, especially those who live out in communities where homes are closer by and you see activity going on in those homes that don't normally happen, except for maybe it's a weekend house or a summer house, but they've been in them for a while. Don't be afraid to say something to your neighbors about registering their kids. We have not seen a tremendous increase in new students this summer, but we thought we would with all the activity of people coming up to their second homes. We thought they may transition. So if you happen to have a conversation in a mailbox or see somebody out in their driveway, please just ask them if they're going to register their kids to hurry up. If they're from New York or New Jersey, they may think we start school after Labor Day when we actually start a week earlier. We start on Monday the 31st. And nothing throws class sizes out of whack than having people show up after school starts. So please, anybody you can beat the bushes to get them to come down to the support services office in the middle school at DV Middle School, or call 296-1883 or 1889. All the forms for new student registration are also on the website, right on the homepage. And then also I have some interesting and good news is that we've created these parent information booklets. You know, the student handbooks are a lot about the rules and things like that, but we wanted to create these informational books for families, particularly when kids are transitioning to new buildings. There's a lot of new practices and procedures and things of that nature. So, and they'll be up next week. Next week sometime you'll start seeing there's one for elementary, one for middle, and one for high school. And with all the work this summer and all the chaos, I also tasked all the principals to craft these books. We used a model from a school district outside Pittsburgh, North Allegheny, which is a real high performing district. And we used theirs as a model because we thought it was a great idea to have a go-to source for parents with an electronic parent guidebook about each level of DV education, just to try to make our communication with parents easier and make that transition from school to school that much easier for the kids too. And that is it, unless you guys have any questions of me.
I have only one question out of this whole thing. Somebody asked before, and I think it was Jessica, about we've got the numbers. Sorry, am I? Yeah, I'm on. We got the numbers for, like, say, Dingdale Primary School, Dingdale Elementary, DVES, SES, but we don't have the individual classes. We only have the buildings. And you wanted to know the classes. Was that it, Jessica?
Yeah, we'll have that for you early next week.
All right.
Probably Monday is my goal.
Because I just saw when that whole computer crashed, Mrs. Butitis. So would the principals have that information for us now? Or
Not yet.
They do have it, but
Like
they're
today, literally
trying to
between
rearrange
morning and
all.
afternoon, we had a swing in enrollment of 30 some kids at the latest update, you know, and then that altered our cyber number, our in-person number, and our Zoom number. And so that's, But so by Monday morning, we should have that.
Right. It'll be a more accurate number Monday morning because they're still rearranging things.
Right, we're in school Monday. Yeah, we're. What'd she say?
Vicki, can you repeat that?
Sure. I said, we'll have a more accurate number Monday morning because tomorrow they're going to continue to just be rearranging class sizes. So if I said what I send you tomorrow morning will probably be different on Monday. So I'd rather give everybody the opportunity to finish doing what they're doing with classes, and we'll get you that information on Monday if that works.
And I think that there's no rush on that. So if
Okay.
even Tuesday morning is a more accurate picture of,
Yep.
because we're still getting calls, and I would rather get that information Tuesday and have an accurate picture of what our classrooms are going to
Okay.
look like, as
No
opposed to
problem. I
once
can
we
get
find
that
out
to you.
by Monday. So it's not I just would like the number sometime like
Yeah.
early next week if possible.
Absolutely. Yep. I can do that for you. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
And one of the issues is guidance counselors are still playing phone tag with families who've called in with questions about DV cyber, outside cyber, et cetera. So they're still doing that, doing the connection to make that final decision. And that's why like the Shahola number jumped today. Poor Jen Murata must be pulling her hair out as the counselor up at Shahola because, you know, there were 15 more kids going into cyber, you know, since our last count on last Friday. So it was like, wow. So.
I mean, you could see it coming. The realty track, the transfer tax receipts. If your board members, you have them in your packets. If you look at July, it's essentially double over what it was last year. So you know it's coming. You know, or theoretically it's coming. So it's a kind of scary quasi time.
And we're seeing homes built for the first time in about 15 years. You know, Vicki will tell you up by her in the Woodlands, all of a sudden those empty patches of land are no longer empty. So we're in another cycle.
If there's no more questions as related directly to the presentation, I'm going to turn it to other business. And first we'll address the board.
I do have something pertaining to the
Okay, yeah,
presentation.
sure.
Okay. Well, first. And I will repeat.
Yeah.
So again, I would like to thank Dr. Blaum for meeting with Jessica, Felicia, and me this morning for 3.5 hours. We toured a sampling of classrooms in the high school and other locations in the high school, such as the gym, CTE, and so forth. Of the rooms we observed, some actually did reveal social distancing of 6 feet. Some had the potential of 6 feet with adjustments, and there were a number that did not. Some of the classrooms that did not contain desks and tables, which were taped off with the intent of not being used. So it was difficult to see what the true potential was in some of those classrooms, but it is obvious that 6 feet of distancing is going to be difficult in some rooms. We chatted about the challenge of reaching 6 feet of social distancing or possibly a little less. And what stood out in my mind is that it was stated that space is available. And I have heard that on other occasions, but not staff. So Jack, I want you to think about that. There have been occasions throughout the year where you have made reference to our reserved funds that could possibly be used in an emergency. Our line of credit, I believe you refer to. Okay. So I would like to see a little more data.
Just so you know, Pam, your camera's probably.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's okay. I don't think they care if they see me. Might be better. So I would like to have a little more data. I think this is ongoing as far as once we see how many students do return, what is our classroom situation? So in chatting and talking about the idea of possibly having more staff, it was emphasized that it's very difficult to find good staff today, especially in light of new teachers who are not student teaching. They're coming right out of college. So, I mean, They're lacking a very, very important aspect of teaching. But in essence, I feel there needs to be more discussion so that we can possibly achieve, especially if there is additional spaces that are available, that somehow we can achieve that social distancing as best we can.
Well, Corey, I have some other business if we're on
Yep,
that
it was a
topic.
great tour. Great.
Thank you
I
so
really
much for
appreciate
that.
it.
All right, any other business from the board?
Corey, I have some other business.
Brian speaking?
Did you hear me?
Hold on. All right, can you speak that? Sorry, Brian, did you say something?
Yes, I have some other business, Corey.
Yep, go ahead.
Great, thanks. Corey, in recognition of I'm getting an echo here.
Oh, let me
You're unmuted. Just in recognition of some new information we have received in terms of student enrollment numbers, in terms of spacing and social distancing, in terms of input from parents and teachers, I'd like to put a motion on the floor, and I move that that the board reconsiders the reopening plan, and that in particular, the board adapts the specific hybrid reopening plan recommended by Dr. Bell and the DVSD administration at the August 6th board meeting. That is my motion. And if we have discussion, I'd like to speak to it at that time.
Absolutely. So there's a motion on the table. Do we have a second for
Yeah,
that motion?
I'll second that.
Jack. So we'll open it up to discussion now to the board, and Brian, continue if you would like.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to explain my reasoning here, and I'm going to vote in favor of adopting that hybrid reopening plan, the one that was recommended by Dr. Bell and the DVSD administration at the August 6th board meeting. And here's why. And I'm going to take a few minutes to explain this. At our August 6th meeting, several board members noted that 25% of parents at that time had not yet responded to our telephone surveys. Those board members were concerned that we did not know how many students would attend in-class learning. Well, it's 2 weeks later, everybody has registered their preference, and we know now. We know that over 1,140 students will occupy the high school every day if we stick with a 5-day full reopening plan. The two middle schools will have a combined total of more than 740 students every day. In addition, since our August 6th meeting, DV administrators have reviewed every single classroom, gymnasium, library, office, and hallway, and tents outside, and given us maps detailing how many students can occupy these classrooms if we were to adhere to social distancing standards. So we know this now, plain and simple. We cannot, as Dr. Blaum stated to my question, we cannot adhere to standards of social distancing if we have over 1,140 students in the high school and 740 students combined in the two middle schools. We know now, what we did not know 2 weeks ago, that there will be too many students and not enough room to socially distance. To stick with the 5-day full reopening plan, given what we know now, is to ask our administrators and principals and teachers to put a square peg into a round hole. It can't be done, no matter how many times and how many hammers we use to try to make it fit. It can simply not be done. And this we know. Our teachers and staff have expressed their commitment to provide the best education possible to our students. But they also express a very rational and sincere desire to avoid exposure to COVID. No teacher wants to bring COVID home to his or her family, and no student should have to live with the fear that he or she, although perhaps asymptomatic, will bring home COVID inadvertently to their family, to their parents, or to their grandparents. We don't want sick kids, we don't want sick teachers, but yet we want to figure out the best way to provide a good education. The hybrid alternative recommended by Dr. Bell on August 6th and on the table now for a vote tonight will split the number of students occupying the high school and middle school buildings in half. And with those numbers, social distancing in the classroom is possible. This is something we now know. We all want the same thing. All of us school board members want the same thing, and everybody should understand that. To minimize the risk of COVID to our children, teachers, and staff, and hopefully to get back to some kind of normal as soon as possible. And although we are in this pandemic, we want to maximize the educational opportunities available to our students for this period of time. Safety on the one hand, good education on the other. So what's the best balance, we ask ourselves? What's the best balance we can achieve? Nothing is certain. We all know that. The virus didn't come with an instruction manual. And yes, there is an evolving medical knowledge about how to combat the virus. Ideas change, but make no mistake, the overwhelming consensus is that schools require, number one, social distancing, and number two, masks. It's not an either or. The consensus on those two facts by the medical community is overwhelming. It's as if you had a chronic stomach ache. 99 doctors said you needed your appendix removed, but one doctor told you you'd be okay if you just drank a glass of guava juice twice a day. Most of us would get the appendix out. The hybrid plan recommended by the administration would split the student population for the high school and middle schools in half. One half would attend in person for the first half of the week, while the second half participated in live classroom instruction via Zoom. For the second part of the week, the groups would switch places. Group 2 would be in the classroom. Group 1 would be participating by Zoom. This plan gives us the best possible chance, the best possible balance of keeping students and teachers safe and providing a meaningful education. Every student, and this is important, would do some Zoom, but would not be in front of a computer for 5 days a week for 6 straight hours. Mark my words, if we do this, we'll be hearing all about Zoom fatigue in 2 weeks, or we'll be hearing all about mask fatigue in 2 weeks. Under the hybrid plan, all students would spend some days in the classrooms wearing masks, but not every day wearing a mask for 6 straight hours. This will reduce the likelihood of computer fatigue. It will reduce the likelihood of mask fatigue. It will keep us balanced in our approach. And we must consider the cost of our decision. If we put over 1,140 students in the high school every day, and if we put more than 740 students in our 2 middle schools every day, there is a greater likelihood that COVID will get in the building and spread. There is a greater likelihood that students, teachers, and staff will get sick from COVID with any or all of its various complications. If that happens, as we've discussed tonight, to any significant degree, our schools will have to go fully remote, and all students will be taking classes at home every day over Zoom. And if we go fully remote, the district will have to lay off staff, cafeteria workers, custodial staff, bus drivers. Delaware Valley School District, as has been mentioned earlier tonight, is the largest employer in Pike County. And if we don't properly manage the risk, and if we end up going fully remote, these layoffs will do real economic damage to our families and our community. A 5-day full reopening involves a greater degree of risk, and the cost of that risk is high, both to the health of our students and teachers and staff, and potentially to our economy. It increases the risk of illness, and it increases the risk of economic harm. The cost of caution, on the other hand, of adapting the hybrid plan recommended by Dr. Bell, the cost of that is relatively low. We enable social distancing. All students share the burden of wearing masks part of the week and Zooming from home part of the week. It enables us to see what happens statewide and locally as schools reopen. It gives us time to assess and reassess the virus transmission rates. It gives us the option of opening more fully if things go well, which is relatively easy to do, but it's a lot harder to close things down if things go poorly. Why wouldn't we want to go into this reopening with an added degree of caution when caution can come with such relative ease? And I'll just close my comments by mentioning one thing. I've mentioned this to John and to other people. I tell it to people all the time. You guys know I'm a history professor. I teach a course on the great explorers, and one of my favorite explorers is Ernest Shackleton, who was an explorer looking to get to the South Pole in 1914. And when he got down into the Arctic Ocean, his ship got trapped in the ice, and the ice crushed the ship. And he and his 28 crew members lived on ice floes for a year and a half, moving from one ice floe to the next with all their equipment when each ice floe would crack or break. And the long and short of it is, after a year and a half, Shackleton and his crew, they saved themselves. They were all brought home alive. And during that year and a half living on the ice, it became a mantra. Shackleton would repeat over and over, as would his men, by endurance, we conquer. And that's what we need to do. We need to show some endurance. We're in this predicament because as a nation, we didn't show the endurance we needed to do in the spring and early summer. We need to show endurance now. We need to conquer this virus. We have new information that we didn't have 2 weeks ago that I think we should weigh heavily and rethink our decision about reopening. And I think it makes a great case for adapting that hybrid plan. I am going to vote for endurance. So thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, Brian. Other board members, discussion?
Can I just ask for clarification on what exactly the motion was? Was it for K through 12?
No, that was John's plan.
Okay, thank you.
No, we can't talk about.
Okay.
Came up the other night.
Well, they didn't hear me, so. I want to go back to July 16th, which was when John presented 5 options. And at that time, about 5 board members expressed that they thought that we should go 5 days a week. A week later, on July 23rd, we got a week in review from Dr. Bell stating that upon consideration of all of the surveys that had come back, that maybe we need to reconsider a 5-day plan and go with 5-day for elementary and hybrid for secondary. So we did know about that 2 weeks before August, whatever it was, when we were given the presentation again. The thing that I found interesting with the survey was that 66% of people said that they were interested in 5 days, and that 22% would go to Zoom if we went to a 5-day schedule. If we did a hybrid schedule, 72% said that they would send their children to school, and 16% would Zoom. To me, that's stating that if we went hybrid, more kids would be coming to school, giving more children an opportunity to spend some time during the week with their teachers, and then having some time doing Zoom, but at least having that contact with the teacher so that if they had a question or a concern, they had in-person contact with them, which is why I really think that the hybrid is the better way to go for the high school. I also think that it would be a much safer opening if only half of the kids were coming in. My concern isn't so much how many kids are in the classroom. My concern is how many kids are in the cafeteria, how many kids are on the school bus, how many kids are changing classes. You know, every 50 minutes, all those kids are going to be changing classes. And that's a real concern to me because we all saw the pictures down in Georgia of what it looked like having masses of kids. And granted, it wasn't for a 20-minute period of time, but it was every 50 minutes. And you can say that you're going to stagger scheduling, but if you're having kids moving out of this room, they're going to 4 different classrooms. And maybe that classroom isn't empty yet. So now all of a sudden you're putting 40 kids in that classroom. And I just think that we really need to think about the whole social distancing issue. And we might not be able to get to the full 6 feet, but I think we ought to try to get as close to it as we can and not put kids in a situation. I would much rather say on October 2nd, we can open 5 days now than have to say on October 2nd, we have to close. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Mhm.
Are any other board members wish to discuss?
Yeah, I just want to say something while it's still on my mind. And thank you, Dr. Carso, for that, and Rosemary. I don't speak as eloquently as either one of you. I'm just a construction guy. But I'd like to keep things simple because sometimes, you know, my wife likes to call me a simpleton. I went to PS11 kindergarten. I was 4 years old. First thing the kindergarten teacher told me was look. And I heard see Dick run, see Jane run, see Spot. I guess Spot was the dog. My first day of kindergarten, everybody was crying. And they were teaching us these things, safety, you know, and the kindergarten teacher, I remember she started teaching us about scissors. And I remember my early days in school, everybody yelling at me, telling me to stop running. Because my first day of kindergarten, everybody was crying. And I looked around and all of a sudden, you know, I got to feeling bad and I wanted to cry. So I took a paper clip and all the cubbies had locks on it that they had no keys for. And I locked all the cubbies. And I was thrown out of kindergarten my first day. My mother had to come get me. So I was a problem kid. You know, I'm just here to try to help these children. Dr. Carso comes on and, you know, he speaks so eloquently and you do, and I don't have none of that. Maybe if I had had a better education, but that's why I send my kids here, so that they can have better than me. And maybe one day they can be a doctor, somebody. Or they can have, you know, my oldest daughter wants to be a music teacher. Maybe she can have, you know, your license, you know, a teacher's license. But I need them to be safe. And it's killing me that I can't send them here, that I'm keeping them home. So they taught us all these things about safety. That's the first thing we teach the children. So I got to be safe. But, you know, I got a Harley Davidson outside. And my whole life, people without a motorcycle license have told me about motorcycles. People that never threw their leg over a Harley Davidson or a Triumph or anything else. And that's a motorcycle license. But people that don't have that have told me about it. And then I go on Facebook and it seems like the whole community is believing a guy that says, well, I got this from a man that has an OSHA 30. And we don't know who this guy is. And we don't know if he got an OSHA 30. But right there is John O'Leary. There's my OSHA 30. And all these people outside, they all have licenses to teach, like I know you do. And those people there and these people here. And they don't want us to go open 5 days. Otherwise, they wouldn't be out here. They'd be home with their families. And then I look over at this guy here, Dr. Bell, next to me. And he's sitting with a license, a superintendent certificate license. And this is his recommendation. So if somebody walked up to me and said, well, why did you disregard the superintendent's recommendation? And what do you have? What qualifies you to disregard him? Because he sat since March 14th with all the people that have all the licenses in infectious diseases and things I could never dream of having. Well, Jack O'Leary, what do you possess where you can disregard his suggestion? And it ain't elegant, but I'm going to say to you, I got nothing for you. I got nothing for you. I can't disregard his stuff. I can't. You know, me and John, we started out in this thing 7.5 years ago arguing with each other. Now we're friends. Strange things happen. But I can't override the man. And I got to say, if we're not going to listen to our own superintendent, what does that say about us? What does that say? So you all do what you got to do. But I hope you understand, this goes against the very nature of who I am. This goes against it. And there's parents out there in TV land. The only thing I'd like to say is you're all fighting. And that's not good for any of us. We're still a community, one way or the other. Be kind to each other. When I show up to your house because I need sheets or a TV or a pillowcase for a battered woman, you give me all of that stuff. I come to you at Christmas time and I need stuff for kids or a jacket or a coat to put on their back. That's who we are. That's who this community is. Don't be the other community for our children. Don't be the one at each other's throats. Everybody's going to need help through this. So help out your family members. That's my only thing to you to say. But if we don't take Dr. Bell, I want this school to open, as Rosemary said. I'd love if in 5 days, by October 5th or whatever that date is, October 1st, we could go 5 days. I agree with Dr. Corso. Our best chance of staying open is to go in slowly. That's our best chance, because then it's 30 days. We're all arguing about 30 days. And we've come this far, and we've all been through hell. Every one of us, every one of our families has been through it. There's been stress. We talk about the mental health. There's been stress in everybody's house, including my own. Our best chance is to stay open. To stay open is to go in slow. And then everybody can come back, hopefully, October 5th. And the space, I know Mrs. Luffy said she's got ideas and stuff like that. Well, let's spend this 30 days looking into those ideas. And I know people here want to form a committee on how this can be done. Well, we don't just throw that out the window because we switched tonight. That's work we're going to need for October. But we're out of time now. We've got to decide tonight if we're going to do those things. But all of those things can be done because we're only talking about 30 days. 30 days, 30 calendar days. But if we open, as Dr. Corso said, and then we have to close. We've just bankrupted our school district, and we've just destroyed our community. And the opportunity for children like mine, who have a father that doesn't have the greatest education in the world, it's patchwork at best. Their opportunity is gone because we've just destroyed the district. That's not what we are about, man. That's not what we're about. So that's my pitch. And I'm not mad at anybody. I am really not mad at anybody. You know, and I hope people don't all of a sudden get mad at me. The only thing I want is to protect your child. That's, if you're going to blame me for something, you're going to be mad at somebody, then be mad at me. I just want to protect your child. It's 30 days. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Other board members, discussion? Is there any other?
I guess I have something to add or say. So we keep going back to the October 2nd date. What magically, I guess, happens on October 2nd? Okay, our transmission is 0 at this point, 0 on both modules given to us by the guidance of the state. It is at 0% transmission. Nowhere near moderate, which would indicate to go to a hybrid model. So October 2nd, we go hybrid. We go into October 2nd. Does space change? Every student now wants to come back. What changes in 30 days that we can now bring all of these students back that we cannot bring back August 31st?
My only thought is on that date, just because we're doing it up at our level too. Oh, sorry.
It's called then consider. There is nothing saying that we make this decision and now, you know, things change and
Absolutely.
that we have to, so it's a then consider. We're, you know.
Yeah, I mean, as I view it, and again, John can weigh in here. too, but I consider moving into the hybrid fashion, similar as I, described last meeting, was that if your transmission rates maintain low, jumping in hybrid, then it gives you grounds to open up fully, much more than grounds to jump in fully with the rates. That's kind of what we're seeing at the college level too. It just gives you ground to open everything up, because if you open everything up, you don't know what's going to happen. At least you have some sort of basis with a hybrid to say, all right, nothing happened with hybrid, let's continue expanding it. So I think that that's what the administration, I'm gathering, John, is that what the administration was guessing there?
Yeah, and that would create 24 school days, 12 days for Group A, and 12 days for Group B. And the only reason we put a date there was to tell parents, we won't change on you before then. The first possible time that we would make the change would be, let's get through 12 days for each group. And all during September, we can be assessing everything and monitoring and seeing what else changes we want to make. And that buys us the month of September to figure out what other changes could we make. The bottom line, I know there's no rhyme or reason. There's no right answer to this. This is uncharted territory, and we could go 5 days and it might work out. We could go hybrid and we could have an infection the first day. You don't know that. I'm just so nervous to have over 1,000 kids in that high school at one time. That's the bottom line.
John, could I add something? Just
Sorry.
Felicia asked a good
The
question.
college level is very different than the high school level in that, and I know Sussex, maybe obviously there's not as, if any, students that stay on campus, but I think to compare the local school district to a college is very deceiving, because colleges have residences. So a lot of some of the colleges that have had increases of transmission after students have gone back is because of dorms and so forth. And Brian, to your point, I think that Pike County's shown their endurance by our low transmission rates, by doing what's right. And as Felicia pointed out, the fact that our transmission rate is 0. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows what's going to happen October 2nd or November 2nd or December 2nd. And I think that every board member here has agonized over this decision. We have a 43-page health and safety plan of ways that we are going to mitigate the spread of COVID. And hopefully there's no spread at all. Obviously, that's what everyone is hoping for. But it's my belief that we did vote. I think that the numbers that we have now are actually a little bit lower of students who are returning in person to the high school. And throughout our tour today with Dr. Blaum, it was stated over and over again that, is this going to be perfect? Absolutely not. If it was optimal, these would all be things that we would do on a regular basis, but nothing that we're going to do is going to be optimal. There are many classes that, and in most periods, with the number of students who are Zooming, that there's the potential to get to either 6 feet social distancing or at least 5 feet. And while, again, none of this is optimal, Dr. Blaum said over and over again that they will make it work and they can get the kids back. So if they can do it, which he said today that they could, and with a 43-page health and safety plan to help keep our kids and our staff and everybody else safe, is it easy? No. But I do think that to be able to get our kids back into the classroom for as long as we possibly can, 5 days a week. I mean, you talked about mask fatigue and Zoom fatigue, but our elementary students, who are probably a more vulnerable population to those things because they're not used to them as much, it's a one or the other choice for them. So if it's a one or the other choice for K-5, then I'm not sure how Zoom fatigue and mask fatigue would be an issue for our secondary students.
Corey, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. I just wanted one quick correction though. The residence halls aren't as big of an issue with the colleges. It's about sitting in a 15-minute confined space with a max number of people not being able to distance. That HVAC can't clear the particles out of the air as fast as these people are emitting, particles from their bodies. And that's what it's about. It's about classrooms and mitigating the amount of particles that are potentially spreading through your HVAC system and how fast those particles clear. So classrooms are the same essentially everywhere.
Yes,
you
but
know?
the difference with the college and with K through 12 is most of the transmission that's happening at the college is happening because those kids, after they're in the class, are going out and partying. They're getting together socially without the mask. They're not taking the precautions. I mean, there's article after article and news story. That's what they're linking that to. Is there any way that I don't have that echo when I'm talking? Because it's very just, thank you. Okay. You know, you open up for 30 days. How many kids are we going to lose in that 30 days who we lost on March 13th because they were not in school in front of a teacher? A lot of children need that. I heard from a lot of parents prior to our July meeting, and I beg to differ, we didn't have 5, we had 9 board members and a superintendent who was very supportive, saying we can do this. Some areas are going to be challenging. I encourage you all to go back and watch the 3.5-hour tape, because I have. Some areas are going to be challenging, but we can do this. And we had parents who were talking to me about it, that they wanted to get their kids in school, that they had to get their kids back in school. So after the July meeting, the trajectory was supposed to be to find out how many wanted to send their kids to school and how many wanted to choose another option. Somehow the hybrid was put in there, and I beg to differ. It was not the 21st, July 21st week in review that gave the information on what they were looking at. That gave some of the data that you had from the second survey. The next email came on the 28th. That's the one that gave a preliminary. It wasn't your recommendation yet. It was, this is what we're thinking. And when there was response to that, to try and ask questions, we were shut down. Understandably, you don't want to have those kind of things, but we didn't have a chance to have that. And this board did not receive the actual presentation for August until the day of the meeting. So some of us did not know until that live meeting what the recommendation was. And quite frankly, after the July meeting, the recommendation was we were going with 5 days, and our transmission rates and all of that came lower since then. Plus the state came out with the, what did they call it? That 2-week model to help us gauge that going forward. Between the July meeting, when the discussion was absolutely towards 5 days, because we all felt that gave people choice. That's what we want to do. We want to give every student, we have talked about for the entire time I'm on this board, we have talked about the whole child and educating the whole child, the mental health of that. I have report after report after report, and no, I'm not a doctor, but if you don't think that every board member, me included, have agonized and not slept over this decision of what to do, because who are we going to harm one way or the other? And let me take that back. It's not who are we going to harm, who is COVID going to harm? We have a model from the state that says if our numbers are below 1.8, and I'm sorry, I'm reading what our numbers actually are. Where'd it go? We have a model from the state that says if our numbers are lower than 10 on the incident rate and lower than 5 on the positivity rate, we can open full in-person model or blended model. Our numbers as of this last one is 1.8 instead of 10 and 0.5 instead of 5. So we were absolutely, at the time of that last meeting, we were ready to open fully. Opening fully by the state's recommendation. Do you mind if I have a drink? Hold on.
What's in that bottle?
Water. Opening fully by the state's recommendation is school is open each day with in-person instruction for all students. All students. That's not offering them another option. With some students, staff in a remote setting as health and safety concerns require.
We are more than taking care of that between having the Zoom, offering our cyber. They have an option for outside cyber. They have an option for private school. Some of those things scare us money-wise. But quite frankly, if we go to a blended model, and if we're forced into another model, if we're forced into it, I don't know if that helps us at all with compensation, but we have students that are going to go to private schools where they can go into school every day. And we may very likely have to foot the bill for that. That's going to run up very expensive. We have information from the CDC and from the American Pediatric Association, and anybody can look it up online. Their recommendation is 3 to 6 feet when your numbers are low, your spread rate is low. Ours is, as Felicia said, we're at 0. We can't get any lower than that. Everyone's afraid of this. We were really afraid of it on March 13th. Some of us have had to work through it. I had just gotten the email today. I follow a lot of education things because I'm not an educator, but since I got on the board, I felt it was my obligation to follow that. I got a study this morning that talks about summer regression and additional regression for not just special needs kids, but for all students when there is some kind of a hurricane that puts them out of school or whatnot. And they related it to COVID. And it shows graphs of where those kids are going to be coming back and how long it's going to take them to make up just the spring, not going forward for those kids. And we have a large number of them. Look at the amount of children who want to come back. Their parents are making that decision. Their parents have the responsibility to make a decision that they feel is safe for their child. We have a responsibility to make sure we do everything we can to make them safe while they're here. And I think we are doing that, and we are doing that over and above what a lot of other districts are doing. We have 3 school board members who took the tour today. Unfortunately, a lot of us were working and we couldn't, but you saw that it is possible. We have teachers who said, we want to be back in school. We want to teach, but we want to be safe. We want them to be safe too. The spread for children, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it right now. Well, here's one that I'll throw out there. CDC director. There's a video online where he did an online interview. And he said that if children are 1 in a million chance to be affected by COVID, they're 5 to 10 times more likely to die from the flu. And I think this is scary. It's unknown, but I think there's a lot more known about it now than we knew in March. The chance of dying is lower, 92%. This just came out from the CDC. I believe it was the CDC. 92% of all COVID deaths in the United States were age 60 and over. In Pennsylvania, of the 7,500 roughly deaths that we had, over 60% of those were in nursing homes. And this was all early on, before there were therapeutics, before people knew how to take care of it, before we all got conditioned in how to wash our hands constantly and take care of ourselves. And don't be fooled, anyone who's sending your child to school, and mine will be one of them. It's going to be different. They're not coming into class as they normally did. They're not going to be sitting next to their friend during lunch. There's going to be space. Things are going to be different. I don't want to call it a new normal because I hope we're not in this forever, but we might be in this for a while, a long while. I don't want to harm children and their education and our next generation when everything that we have, that our local government, our federal government has given us, is pointing to the fact that we can safely open now with protections, and we're doing that. And let me say one more thing. Two more things. And sorry, I don't usually talk a lot. I am really sorry. We have students playing sports. And I am absolutely not against them playing sports. I think it's great that they're back to it. But there's no social distancing when they're playing sports. And depending on the sport, there's sometimes spit flying. I mean, let's just be real. And we are going to have teams that go to other districts and presumably other district children coming to our district to play sports, contact sports. The risk there is a whole lot more than having 18 or 20 kids sitting 3 feet apart in the classroom with a mask on. We had from July to August, all I heard was, this is great. We can send our kids back. We know your DV, you're going to do it right and as safe as you can. And we trust it. We just feel comfortable sending our kids in. And others who said, this is great because there's options. I don't have to send my child back if I'm not comfortable with it. We didn't get, at least I didn't get a single parent asking for a blended model until we got one email in, I believe it was the day of the August meeting. Since the August meeting, we've had emails on both sides, for and against, and I've had phone calls and texts, I'm sure you all have. Our numbers for infection rate show we can open. The numbers of our parents who have stated they want their kids in school show we need to open. I could go on because I've got a lot of information here, but I'll stop.
Thank you, Don.
Lordi?
Brian, I'm sorry, I cut you off before and I just,
No, that's quite.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I want everyone to be able to speak, certainly, and I just have a brief thing to say. We have to realize that we are undertaking right now an unprecedented national experiment. Our kids have been home with their families for 3 months, longer, because of the closing in the spring. They've been hanging out with their families. Our families have been hanging out together. Our teachers have been together with, everyone's been together with their families or maybe a small group of friends. Across the whole country, we are about to take all these children and teachers and put them in crowded buildings. This is an unprecedented national health experiment, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. I love the fact that Pike County has a low transmission rate, and we should be proud of that. Where I live in Matamoros, it takes me 5 minutes to walk to New York and 10 minutes to walk to New Jersey. There is an interstate highway that drives by our high school and one of our middle schools, right through the center of Pike County. As I said last week, no school district is an island unto itself. It takes one asymptomatic person, a sneeze, and 3 feet, and this thing spreads exponentially. There were 2 new COVID cases from Tuesday to Wednesday in Pike County. We don't know if it's going to spread. I hope it doesn't spread, but if we're undertaking a huge experiment, and I just think it's the better part of caution to open slowly until we see what happens with this national experiment. We see what happens when we send millions of kids into school buildings with teachers, and let's just keep our eyes open. And as Corey has said to me, you can throttle up a lot easier than you can throttle down. And I think that should be our strategy. Thanks.
Thanks, Corey. I just need 30 seconds here. Children, yeah, this is like a Senate 30 seconds. It'll be a minute and 15. Listen, children, this is horrible for all of us. I've said this before. Children should not be a number, and neither should our employees. These are people we value. All right. But if you want a number, I'm the guy with the OSHA card, you know, the one that can actually produce it. OSHA says, and I work on high rises my whole life since I was a very young man. If I stand up and just keel over, which I will do one day, but not hopefully today, I need to be within 6 foot of an edge on a high rise, or I need to be wearing a safety harness with a lanyard. But if you want to talk about numbers, they say that's it. 6 feet is the minimum. That's as close as I can get to the edge without a lanyard, because most men are 6 feet tall. So if I was to stand up and keel over, I wouldn't fall off the edge of this building. And I've seen guys come off of high rises. But the number one accident thing that OSHA will tell you is slips, trips, and falls. So if I'm going to fall off the edge of a building, it's because I slipped, tripped, and then I fell. And I'm going to need a lot more than 6 feet to catch me. And OSHA will also tell you that any fencing like we had up here when we did the construction has to withstand 200 pounds of pressure. Well, I'm a fat guy driving a fat boy Harley Davidson out there. I weigh 230. It's not holding me. So these are, like Dr. Carso was trying to say, these are minimum requirements. My business and why I have this OSHA and all the safety training, if you do the minimum, you're dead. You know, people say to me, are you fit to ride a motorcycle? I do a fitness test. Every time I pull that thing back in the driveway, I've passed my test. But if you mess up one time, you're dead. High risk. I like to invest. I once worked on Wall Street for 90 days. I hated everything about it, but I like the investment. So I still like to invest. If I'm going to do this high risk, where I could destroy the school, bankrupt it, hurt the community, I need a high reward. What's the reward of doing this? What's the reward of not waiting 30 days? There's no reward there for me. If Rosemary Walsh is an educator, and she's an educator her whole life, right? But she's never educated in this. So do I throw 50 children at Rosemary? Or do I throw 100 kids at Rosemary? That's all the difference in hybrid is, half the kids. Wouldn't I be better off, and doesn't Rosemary stand better odds of succeeding if she has to first deal with half the children and then maybe in 30 days when she's got that? Because I worked through this and we mitigated. My wife worked through this and we mitigated people's problems. And on the first day we went back after we pulled off the job, all of us, and they agreed to mitigate our concerns. We all went back and we were all horrified and we were all lousy workers. Nothing got done. The following Monday, when we realized, hey, we're all still alive, none of us are dead, we got a little bit better. All these teachers, this is what they're going to face day one. They're not going to be their normal educator. Everybody is horrified the first day back. I'm not afraid to say I was. Then when you realize week 1, week 2, I'm still alive, I'm still here, it gets easier. So I wouldn't want to, if Rosemary was teaching my child, I wouldn't want to overwhelm her the first day, because although she's been an educator her whole life, this is the first time she's done it in this. And I know I went over my 2 minutes, but that's what I'm going to say. We're talking about 30 days.
Can I have 1 minute?
Is 1 minute or your 1 minute?
Just 1 minute. Jack, you just focused on the teacher, and it would be easier for the teacher to have 50 kids instead of 100 kids in the beginning. all we keep hearing is this is about the children. This is about the students. Absolutely, we want our teachers safe. I was scared to death going back to work. I crossed state lines to go back to work, and I had to have a certified letter that I had to carry with me. So that, because that's the point it was, all right? We're not in March, okay? We're not in March. People are going on vacations. They're going to beaches. They're having backyard barbecues. They're shopping in Walmart on a regular basis again. We're not in March. The kids need to be back in school, the ones that do. And you know what? I respect every parent who has made a decision to do something other than that. And they have that absolute right. But for the kids who have lost 3 months in the spring and who can't afford to lose any more, I think we need to bring them back. I think everything that the government has given us points to them coming back. So thank you. I think that was a minute.
Thanks.
So then why won't you let them come back?
Let's get
Mr.
Jack.
Jack has the floor. Mr. Fisher.
First of all, I would just like to say that Brian Carso, I wish I had a professor like you when I was in college. Jack O'Leary, I wish had I joined the union, you'd be my supervisor. Rosemary, I respect your teacher's certificate. I do not have a teacher's license. I have different licenses. So each of these comments have been fabulous. And I point toward the financial as usual. I don't think we're heading toward bankruptcy. I do think we'll be in financial distress probably for 2 to 3 to 4 years. And that will require some additional financing. But as it gets down to transmission rates, if we are at 0 now, how much lower can we go? And I think, that's a self-answering question. What more will we know 5 weeks from now? Probably nothing. So I'm in favor of the open school 5 days a week for everyone. Let the parents choose what they want to do based on the criteria that we're given. I don't necessarily agree with Brian's analysis that we have 1,141 high schoolers and we can split that in half, because once we say we're doing that, I think we have to offer them all the options, not just splitting them in half. Maybe some will go cyber. Maybe some would go private, as somebody mentioned. So I think the administration has done a fabulous job based on what the board required you to do. John Bell, your staff, and you have worked tirelessly. I'm concerned about everyone's health as I've talked to you individually. So I'm looking forward to opening school, and every week, I hope we get an update. I still think we should have a meeting next Thursday to see where we are next Thursday, and maybe every week for the month of September. So I really respect all of you and all of your opinions. And Dawn, yes, you normally don't speak that much, but you've been very eloquent, and I appreciate that. And I know you've worked through this pandemic, as have I. Believe it or not, we were considered essential. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jack. And then, and I know the board members expressed their wanting the reopening committee and working with the administration. So talking with John, we think that that'll be the role of the reopening committee to help monitor the situation with the administration. Just throwing that out there for the board. So thank you for that.
I would just add that the governor of Pennsylvania put the burden, the decision, the very critical decision of reopening schools on the shoulders of school board members. School board members represent a cross-section of a community. We have so many responsibilities to attend to as a school board member. Education, of course, is our most important, but so is the economy, so is mental health, special education, and it goes on and on. And you know how many different issues we have addressed regarding those items and many others. John, since everything changed this past month, a month ago, we thought we were going back full-time for both elementary and secondary. I can't tell you, every day when I wake up, I wish this decision was put on your shoulders. So you could tell the parents of the children who will be in school 5 days a week that they can continue with their life. They can go to work. Whereas the parents of high school students, if they need to go to work, their children stay home alone, middle school and high school, secondary, or they don't go to work. It's just one of many decisions that parents have to make because of not having full-time. And based on the fact that the infection rate doesn't exist right now in Pike County that I'm aware of, I have a hard time going against opening up. Do I feel there has been sufficient discussion concerning this? No. Only recently, in the past few days, have we gotten serious about the discussion. I think the school board would have been open to many decisions, and such as portable classrooms, shut down, adding more staff, shut down. It goes on and on. So I am thrilled that we're going to have a committee, because we do need to move forward discussing many items. And that's basically what I have to say. I am responsible for an entire community, along with the rest of this board.
Thanks, Pam. Anybody else? Just two quick things I just wanted to point out, and I'm very quick usually. So 30 seconds. So the transmission rate's low, but I wanted to make sure we don't brush over Brian's comment, because it makes a ton of sense, and I've had a ton of debates over this, is that, you know, for any math folks out there, you don't run a regression or a correlation, change the variable without adding 1,500 or 1,100 kids in a single school and then expect the same outcome. You don't know what's going to happen. So because we're changing the variables, we don't know what's going to happen. Transmission rate was high in March when everybody was in school, and then it started going down when everybody wasn't in school anymore. And so we have no idea what's going to happen with the transmission rate there. That's just one point. And the second is, and you know, this one kind of struck me, and this one only was over the last 2 days, was I got called from 2 local businesses, and you know, bottom line, their message was, don't screw this up. You know, and they said, don't screw this up, because if we go back in the yellow and red, their businesses are done. You know, they're back out again. And, you know, we have business owners on this board, you know, that are in the same boat, and I totally understand and respect everybody. But, you know, they're right on that edge. And they're saying, if you do this and we jump full feet in, which is what I'm afraid of, we jump full feet in, something does happen. The governor moves this county, because this county, 1,100 times parents, times relatives, times everybody, if it spreads, essentially we could move back into yellow or red at that point, which is something that these business owners really expressed their concerns about, which, you know, I was already on that line, but they pushed me even further to start slow, see how it goes. If we're okay, then you have time. We have time to do a lot of different things in 30 days as a board working with the administration. So those are my only 2 points. And so with that, is there any other discussion? All right, Julie, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Bouquet. No. Brian Carso.
Yes.
Jessica Decker. No. Jack Fisher. No. Corey Homer.
Yes.
Pam Lutfi. No. Jack O'Leary.
Yes.
Felicia Sheehan.
No.
Rosemary Wall.
Yes.
4 yes. 4 yes, 5 no. Motion failed.
All right, thank you, Julie. And then thank you, everybody, and everybody out there in public. Everybody knows this is not an easy decision. Every board member here, I have personally the utmost respect for every opinion. And I hope everybody does too. Essentially, we're one community. If we sink, we're all on the same ship together, essentially. So that's kind of how we have to look at it. So I appreciate all the letters, calls, texts to every board member over, because it definitely helped push a lot of our decisions and discussion tonight.
Can I say one more thing, Corey? Hold on. Yeah, I'm unmuted. I think also the community and those who are sending their kids back, and even when they're not, because we're all part of the community, we've got to be diligent about what our responsibility as parents is. And that's making sure our child doesn't have a fever before we send them into school. That's our responsibility. Keep them home if they're sick. That's our responsibility. If we ourselves aren't feeling well, maybe we need to consider keeping our child home until we know what's going on. Those are, and I don't think we've already had discussions about the whole absentee thing. There's obviously going to be some leeway with this because of COVID, but we need to be responsible to keep the kids responsible, to keep the schools healthy. If we start school with no transmission rate, and everything that I've read from the CDC and the American Pediatrics Academy seems to be that the kids aren't spreading this. And from, I believe it's Sweden, it doesn't look like there's spread between teachers and students either. So if we pay attention and we do this right, we should be able to be successful. And hopefully the bars that are now serving hot dogs so they can give drinks won't be spreading it.
One more comment also. I think that the parents really need to step up. And I think the parents are going to need to make sure that when they send their children to school, that their children are aware you are wearing your mask the entire time until your teacher says you can take it off. And that means having it up over your mouth and your nose, and mine's off right now, not down around your chin. I can't tell you how many places I've been. Yeah, they've got a mask on, but it's down here. And I think that, you can't have 20 children in a classroom and one teacher trying to monitor all these when one kid goes, well, my mom said I don't have to do that. And I think the parents, if we're going to open up 5 days a week, parents are going to have to step up and really back us up and support us with the decisions that we're making to try to keep their children safe. And not, this is a hoax and I don't care. You got to care about everybody else in this school. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. John, do we have questions from the public? Did we have?
They're rolling in now.
Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Oh yeah, because that's not working. Calendar.
Right. John's just running to grab the questions really quick from the public for everybody out there. So we're going to take a 30-second to 45-second break.
They're going to be our biggest problem. Am I muted?
So I had a comment about lunch.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if perhaps the administration could look into a temporary reduction in costs, prices. Let's say for the first 90 days we're in school, and you never hear me talk about that because normally I want to earn more money. Yeah, but we are in unprecedented times, and I'm thinking maybe we can look into reducing school lunch prices across the board.
That's a great idea.
So just something to talk about.
John, while we were talking, Jack brought up the idea about possibly reducing school lunches for 90 days. Essentially, I think
Temporary reduction in price, 30, 40, 50%. Make it easier for the families that are unemployed and so forth and not yet eligible. Yeah, so something for Bill to crunch some numbers and what it might cost us for that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Great idea.
Are we still?
There are only 6 new emails in the inbox, and it won't load them for some reason. So I will look at them in the morning. If it's things that can be answered, that's what I've been doing with the ask. If it's things that can be answered or who they need to call, whatever, I've been answering them. But if they were just opinion pieces, I've just been sharing them,
You'll send them to us tomorrow.
Yeah, what I normally do is any opinion pieces I send to the DV school board, and then Corey's been, that's why Corey's been sending them to you. They've been through the Ask DV.
Oh, so they'll come from you.
Yeah, you've seen them all
Okay,
that I've
yeah,
been
okay,
forwarding, right?
yeah.
Yeah, they're all going.
And then
out,
if they're
right?
just
Okay,
procedural, I tell them who, I handle all that stuff for you. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, if there are questions, let's just make sure you address them and give them to the answers.
Yeah.
So great, thank you. All right. So the announcements of the meeting schedule. So our next meeting, we're gonna hold on to the August 27th date if everybody's okay with that. And if you're away, because some people might be, I've heard, so we'll have a Zoom option, of course. I think these hybrid meetings are kind of the best of both worlds for everybody in this time. And so that's going to be August 27th, 2020, 7 o'clock in the administration offices. September 10th, 2020, there'll be a work session at 7 o'clock at the administration offices, most likely held in that hybrid fashion as well, giving board members the opportunity. And September 17th, 2020 as well, regular board meeting, 7 o'clock in the administration offices. If for whatever reason, the governor lifts the 25-person mandate per meetings, our goal would be to move our meetings most likely to the auditorium to allow for social distancing and allow for public input. We really do miss having everybody in front of us, I think. That's something I think we do miss. All of them, everybody. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
Motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
That's what we're gonna have for my kid, Jack. See you later.